Chapter 26, The Sigurd Saga. 1. The beginning of the story. The Elder Edda, a tapestry of Norse mythology and heroic tales. The Elder Edda, a compilation of Old Norse poetry, serves as a profound testament to the rich cultural heritage of the Norse people. This collection is divided into two distinct parts, each exploring different aspects of Norse mythology, heroic sagas, and the moral codes that shape their lives. Part 1, The Gods and the Cosmos. The first part, often referred to as the Poetic Edda, delves deep into the realm of the gods, detailing their creation and the intricate workings of the cosmos. Poems like the Völuspá, the prophecy of the Völva, and the Grimnismal, Grimnir's Lay, vividly depict the Norse mythological landscape, from the genesis of the world out of chaos to the cataclysmic final battle of Ragnarok. Part 2, the Volsung Saga and Sigurd's epic journey. The second part of the Elder Edda, known as the Heroic Lays, shifts focus from divine beings to mortal heroes, chronicling the remarkable exploits of legendary figures. Among these sagas, the Sigurd Saga, or Volsung Saga, holds a prominent place. This epic narrative follows the life of Sigurd, the most celebrated hero of the North, through a series of extraordinary adventures. Sigurd, a hero of unparalleled strength and courage. Sigurd, son of Sigmund, is revered for his exceptional strength, courage, and wisdom. His legendary feats are recounted in various Eddas and Sagas, including his renowned slaying of the dragon Fafnir, acquisition of the cursed treasure of the Nibelungen, and forging of the invincible sword, Gram. The Sigurd Saga, a tapestry of themes and motifs. More than a mere collection of action-packed tales, the Sigurd Saga delves into profound themes such as human nature, morality, and the inexorable grip of fate. Loyalty, betrayal, revenge, and the pursuit of power intertwine throughout the narrative, imbuing Sigurd's story with depth and resonance. Examples from the Eddas and Sagas. To grasp the full richness of the Sigurd Saga, one must explore the original sources, Eddas and Sagas that offer windows into the Norse worldview. Key texts include Volsunga Saga, composed in Iceland around the 13th century. This saga provides a detailed account of Sigurd's life, from his heroic deeds to his tragic demise. A Middle High German epic poem from the 12th century, which portrays Sigurd as Siegfried. It emphasizes themes of love, betrayal, and revenge, culminating in the downfall of the Burgundian kingdom. Sigurdrifumal, an Eddic poem associated with the Poetic Edda, featuring Sigurd's encounter with the Valkyrie Sigurdrifa, who imparts wisdom and knowledge of runes and magic. These texts offer varied perspectives and embellishments on Sigurd's saga, enriching the tapestry of Norse storytelling that has captivated audiences for centuries. Conclusion. The Sigurd Saga, as preserved in the Elder Edda, stands as a testament to the enduring allure of Norse mythology and heroic epics. Through Sigurd's extraordinary life, we gain profound insights into the Norse ethos, their values, and their enduring fascination with themes of heroism, destiny, and the complexities of human existence. Sigi, the ancestor of the Volsungs. Here begins the tale of a man named Sigi, who is reputed to be the son of Odin. Another significant figure in the story is Skadi, a formidable and strong man, though Sigi was considered mightier and of higher birth according to the accounts of that time. Skadi had a servant named Bredi, a name derived from his assigned tasks. Despite being a thrall slave, Bredi was as skilled and powerful as many free men, and even surpassed some of them. One day, Sigi went hunting for deer with Bredi. They hunted all day until evening. When they gathered their game at dusk, Sigi noticed that Bredi had killed far more deer than he had. This angered Sigi greatly. He couldn't stand that a mere thrall had outdone him in hunting. In a fit of rage, Sigi attacked and killed Bredi, then buried his body in a snowdrift to hide his crime. When Sigi returned home that evening, he claimed that Bredi had gone off into the wild woods. He soon vanished from my sight, Sigi said, and I know nothing more of his whereabouts. Skadi, however, was suspicious of Sigi's story. He believed Sigi had deceived him and had probably killed Bredi. Skadi sent out men to search for Bredi, and their search eventually led them to a large snowdrift where they found his body. Skadi declared that from then on, all large snowdrifts would be called Bredi's Drift, in memory of this event. Thus, it became common to refer to any significant snowdrift in this way. It was now clear to all that Sigi had murdered Bredi. Because of this, he was declared an outlaw, banished from holy places, and unable to stay in his homeland with his father. Odin, taking pity on Sigi, accompanied him away from the land for a long journey. They traveled a considerable distance without stopping until they reached a place where there were warships. Once there, Sigi embarked on a life of piracy and warfare, using the resources and strength given to him by his father before they parted. He was successful in his ventures, winning every battle he engaged in. Eventually, Sigi's conquests led him to acquire land and a kingdom of his own. He married a noblewoman and became a powerful king, ruling over the land of the Huns and gaining a reputation as a great warrior. Sigi and his wife had a son named Rifir. Rifir grew up in his father's house, becoming a tall, strong, and handsome young man, much like his father. Source material: Sigi was a son of Odin and a man of great prowess and fame. Volsunga Saga, Chapter 1. Now Bredi was the thrall of Sigi and the best of hunters. One day, when they had gone hunting together, Bredi killed more game, and Sigi, in his envy, slew him and buried him in the snow. Volsunga Saga, Chapter 1. Odin found him and guided him away from his homeland, where he became a wanderer in many lands. Chapter 1. Sigi married into the royal family of the Huns and was given a kingdom. He ruled wisely and well, and in time he had a son named Rerir. Volsunga Saga, Chapter 1. His wife's brothers conspired against him, and Sigi was slain in an ambush. But his son Rerir escaped, avenged his father, and reclaimed the kingdom. 3. Rerir and Volsung. As Sigi grew old, envy and treachery surrounded him. Eventually, even those he trusted most, including his wife's brothers, turned against him. They attacked him when he was least prepared, overwhelming him and his followers. Thus, Sigi perished along with all his people. However, Rerir, his son, was not present during this betrayal. Gathering a mighty army of loyal friends and prominent figures from the land, Rerir seized the lands and kingdom of his father, establishing his own rule firmly. With his realm secure, Rerir remembered the wrong done by his mother's brothers, who had murdered his father. He assembled a formidable army and launched an assault against his kinsmen, disregarding their kinship due to the evil they had inflicted upon him. He pursued his vengeance relentlessly, not ceasing, until he had dealt with those responsible for his father's death. Thus, he acquired land, power, and wealth, surpassing even his father in greatness. Rerir amassed considerable wealth through his military successes and took a wife worthy of him. Despite their happiness together, they faced a great sorrow. They had no children to inherit their legacy. Distressed by this, they fervently prayed to the gods, Odin and Freyja. Moved by their entreaties, Freyja sent her casket-bearing maiden, the daughter of Hrimnir the giant, with an apple in her hand. Disguised as a crow, she flew to King Rerir and dropped the apple into his lap. Understanding its significance, Rerir returned home and shared part of the apple with his queen. As the tale goes, the queen soon conceived a child, but her pregnancy was prolonged. Meanwhile, King Rerir had to depart for war to maintain peace in his realm, as was customary for kings. During his absence, Rerir fell seriously ill and passed away, yearning to join Odin, a fate desired by many in those times. Source material: Sigi made many enemies in his long reign. Among them were his brother-in-laws. In his old age, his enemies had him killed. His son, Rerir, succeeded Sigi. Rerir, who was an even greater king than his father, in bravery and combat, avenged his father, dealing with his uncles and other enemies. Volsunga Saga, Chapter 1. The queen's condition did not improve, and 6 long winters passed with her illness weighing heavily upon her. Sensing her approaching end, she instructed that the child be cut from her womb. Following her command, a strong boy was born, kissed by his mother before she passed away. He was named Volsung, succeeding his father as king of Hunland. From a young age, Volsung displayed great strength, courage, and prowess in all manner of trials and battles, becoming renowned as the greatest warrior of his time. Upon reaching adulthood, Volsung received a proposal from Ljod, the daughter of Hrimnir, who had delivered the apple to his father. Volsung married her, and their union was marked by enduring love and prosperity. They were blessed with 10 sons and 1 daughter. Their eldest twins, Sigmund and Signy, stood out as the most exceptional and beautiful of King Volsung's children, renowned for their intelligence, valor, and noble lineage. The saga recounts that King Volsung commissioned the construction of a magnificent hall. In its center stood a large oak tree, its branches spreading beautifully over the hall's roof, while its trunk, known as Branstock, remained within, a symbol of strength and heritage for the Volsung dynasty. 4. The story of Sigurd and Signy. Once upon a time there was a powerful king named Sigurd who ruled over the land of Gothland. Sigurd was a mighty ruler commanding a vast kingdom and many loyal subjects. His heart was set on marrying Signy, the daughter of King Volsung. Sigurd traveled to meet King Volsung and earnestly requested Signy's hand in marriage. King Volsung, along with his son's wife, warmly received Sigurd's proposal. However, Signy herself was reluctant and disheartened by the prospect of marrying Sigurd. Despite her reservations, she deferred to her father's wishes, allowing him to decide her fate, as he had always done in matters concerning her. King Volsung decided to agree to the match and arranged for Signy to be betrothed to King Sigurd. To celebrate the wedding, King Volsung planned a grand feast at his hall, inviting King Sigurd and his entourage to attend on the appointed day. King Sigurd arrived with a large retinue, including many distinguished men, and the festivities began. The mysterious visitor. On the evening of the celebration, great fires were lit along the length of the hall, casting a warm glow. In the center of the hall stood a magnificent tree known as the Branstock. As the guests gathered around the fires, a mysterious figure entered the hall. He was unlike anyone they had seen before. This stranger wore a cloak covered in spots and was barefoot, with linen breeches tightly bound to his legs. He carried a sword in his hand and wore a slouched hat that shaded his face. He was a towering figure, ancient in appearance, and strikingly, he had only one eye. Without a word, the stranger approached the Branstock. He raised the sword and drove it deep into the trunk of the tree, so that only the hilt was visible. The room fell silent, and everyone watched in awe. The stranger then spoke in a commanding voice. "Whoever can draw this sword from the tree shall receive it as a gift from me. They will find that no better sword has ever been held in hand than this one." With that, the mysterious man turned and left the hall as suddenly as he had appeared. No one knew who he was or where he went. The challenge. Excitement rippled through the hall. Each man believed he would be the one to draw the sword, eager to prove his strength and claim the prize. The noblest among them stepped forward first, followed by others in turn, each straining with all their might to pull the sword from the tree. Despite their efforts, none could budge it. Then Sigmund, the son of King Volsung, approached the Branstock. He grasped the sword's hilt and, with seemingly little effort, drew it free from the tree, as if it had been waiting for him. The weapon gleamed in his hand, and all who saw it marveled, believing they had never seen a finer sword. King Sigurd, watching with keen interest, desired the sword greatly. He offered Sigmund a sum of gold 3 times the sword's weight, hoping to buy it from him. But Sigmund refused, saying, "You could have taken the sword just as I did if it had been meant for you, but since it has come into my possession first, you shall never have it, no matter how much gold you offer." Sigurd's face darkened with anger at Sigmund's words, feeling insulted by the refusal. Though he appeared outwardly calm and indifferent, his mind was already plotting vengeance for the slight he felt he had suffered, a grudge that would soon reveal itself in the events to come. Interpretation and symbolism. This tale from the Volsunga Saga is rich with symbolism and foreshadowing. The mysterious stranger is often interpreted as Odin, the one-eyed Allfather, who places the sword in the Branstock as a test and a gift. The sword represents destiny and worthiness, qualities that Sigmund alone possesses in this moment, signifying his role as a hero in the saga. Sigurd's reaction to Sigmund's success reveals his true nature. His envy and desire for the sword foreshadow his future treachery, setting the stage for the unfolding drama of betrayal and revenge that is central to the Volsung family's story. This narrative, filled with themes of fate, honor, and the complexities of human relationships, continues to captivate readers with its timeless exploration of the human condition. 5. Sigurd's departure and Signy's warning, a modern retelling. That evening, King Sigurd laid down to sleep beside his new bride, Signy. The following morning dawned clear and calm. As the first light broke, King Sigurd expressed his desire to depart. He was anxious about the weather possibly worsening or the sea becoming too rough for safe travel. King Volsung and his sons saw no reason to object to Sigurd's departure, especially noticing his eagerness to leave the festivities. Signy's concerns before Sigurd could set off, Signy approached her father, King Volsung. Her heart was heavy with a sense of foreboding. "Father, I do not wish to accompany Sigurd. I do not feel right about this marriage. I sense that great evil will come from it. If we do not end this union soon, our family will suffer." King Volsung, however, remained resolute in his decision. He replied firmly, "Do not speak such words, my daughter. It would dishonor Sigurd and our family if we were to break our promise to him. He has not wronged us. We cannot distrust him or show hostility by calling off the marriage. Breaking our word would bring shame upon us and potentially turn Sigurd against us. It is our duty to honor the commitments we have made." Sigurd's invitation. Despite Signy's apprehensions, preparations for Sigurd's departure continued. Before leaving, Sigurd extended an invitation to King Volsung and his sons. He invited them to visit Gothland 3 months hence, bringing as many men as they deemed fitting for their honor and status. Sigurd promised to make amends for the brevity of his stay at the wedding feast, where he had lingered for just 1 night, an act seen as unconventional and somewhat disrespectful by their customs. King Volsung, bound by his sense of honor and the promise he had made, accepted Sigurd's invitation. With their agreement settled, the two kings bid farewell. Sigurd took Signy with him as they departed for his homeland in Gothland. 6. The tale of King Volsung's fateful journey to Gothland. King Volsung and his sons set out for Gothland as promised to King Sigurd. They boarded 3 well-manned ships and enjoyed a smooth voyage, arriving at Gothland late in the evening. Signy's warning. That very night, Signy, the daughter of King Volsung and now wife of King Sigurd, secretly met with her father and brothers. She warned them of Sigurd's treacherous intentions, explaining that he had gathered a massive army, far beyond what they could hope to defeat. She urged them, "Sigurd plans to deceive you and bring about your downfall. Leave now and return home to muster your forces. Then come back stronger and avenge yourselves. Do not stay here and fall victim to his treachery." King Volsung's response. King Volsung listened to his daughter, but remained resolute. He responded, "People and nations will remember the vow I made even before I was born, that I would never flee in fear from either fire or sword. I have lived by this vow all my life, and now that I am old, I will not turn back from it. My sons will not be mocked by the maidens accused of fearing death. Every man must face death once, and no one can escape that fate. I have fought in 100 battles, sometimes with greater and sometimes with lesser numbers, but I have always emerged victorious. It will never be said that I fled or begged for peace. We will stand and fight as bravely as we can." Signy, overwhelmed with grief, pleaded with her father to let her stay with him, but King Volsung was firm. "You must return to your husband, no matter what happens to us," he said. The battle with Sigurd. At dawn the next day, King Volsung roused his men and ordered them to prepare for battle. They went ashore, fully armed. They did not have to wait long before King Sigurd and his formidable army attacked. A fierce battle ensued. Volsung and his sons fought valiantly, breaking through Sigurd's ranks 8 times, cutting and striking all around them. However, as they attempted this for the 9th time, King Volsung fell amidst his men, and all his warriors were slain, except for his 10 sons who were captured. The grim fate of Volsung's sons. Signy, learning of her father's death and her brother's capture, begged King Sigurd for a small mercy. She requested, "Do not kill my brothers quickly. Place them in the stocks for a while. It is said that seeing is sweet to the eyes. I only ask for a little more time with them, as I know my pleas for their lives will not save them." King Sigurd, seeing an opportunity to prolong their suffering, agreed. He ordered a massive beam to be brought and fixed over the feet of the 10 brothers in a remote part of the forest. There they sat, bound from day to night. As night fell, a she-wolf emerged from the woods, old, fearsome, and menacing. She attacked the brothers, killing and devouring the first one before leaving. The she-wolf's terror. Each morning, Signy sent a trusted servant to check on her brothers. When he returned with news that one had been killed by the she-wolf, she was stricken with grief, fearing for the remaining 9. Night after night, for 9 nights, the she-wolf came and killed another brother until only Sigmund remained. On the 10th night, Signy devised a desperate plan. She sent her trusted servant to Sigmund with a jar of honey. The servant spread the honey over Sigmund's face and placed a bit in his mouth. When the she-wolf arrived that night, she sniffed Sigmund's sweet scent and began licking the honey off his face. When she thrust her tongue into his mouth to lick the honey, Sigmund seized the moment. He bit down hard on her tongue and held on with all his strength. The she-wolf pulled back with such force that the stalks broke apart, but Sigmund's grip was unyielding, and he tore out the wolf's tongue by its roots. This injury was fatal, and the she-wolf died. The she-wolf's true identity. Some say this she-wolf was none other than King Sigurd's own mother. Using her dark arts and witchcraft, she had transformed herself into the beast to carry out this gruesome deed. This tale of bravery and sorrow is a testament to the enduring spirit of King Volsung and his lineage, marked by their unwavering courage in the face of inevitable doom and their refusal to flee from their fate. How Signy sent the children of her and Sigurd to Sigmund, a modern retelling. After Sigmund was freed and had broken free from his restraints, he sought refuge deep in the forest. Living in the woods, he evaded capture and stayed hidden. Signy, his sister, secretly sent out people to discover if he was still alive. When her messengers found Sigmund, he recounted his survival, including his harrowing encounter with the wolf that had almost ended his life. They brought this news back to Signy. Determined to aid her brother, Signy went to the forest to find him. Together, they built a concealed underground house in the woods, providing Sigmund a safe place to hide. For a time, Signy managed to keep his presence a secret, regularly sending him the supplies he needed. Meanwhile, King Sigurd believed that all the Volsungs had perished. Sigurd's sons. Sigurd and Signy had 2 sons. When the eldest boy turned 10, Signy sent him to the forest to join Sigmund, hoping he could help avenge their father. The boy arrived at Sigmund's hidden shelter late one evening. Sigmund welcomed him and assigned him a task to test his courage. "Prepare our bread," Sigmund instructed. "I will go gather firewood." He handed the meal sack to the boy and left to collect firewood. Upon returning, Sigmund found that the bread was still not made. He questioned the boy, "Is the bread ready?" The boy nervously replied, "I couldn't touch the meal sack because there was something alive inside it." Realizing the boy lacked the bravery needed for their mission, Sigmund knew he could not rely on him. When he reported this to Signy, she acknowledged the boy's inadequacy for their purpose. Signy, resigned but firm, said, "If he cannot help us, there is no place for him. Do what you must." Following her directive, Sigmund took the boy's life, believing it necessary for their greater cause, the second son. As the seasons changed, another winter came. Signy sent her second son to Sigmund, hoping he might prove to be braver than his brother. Unfortunately, events unfolded in a similar manner. The boy, too, failed the test of courage, and, on Signy's instruction, Sigmund took his life as well. 8. The birth of Sinfjotli, son of Sigmund. In the unfolding saga of the Volsung family, we encounter a story of disguise, cunning, and the emergence of a new hero, Sinfjotli, who would carry on the legacy of his ancestors. A clever witch's help. One day, while in her private quarters, Signy was visited by a very clever witch. Driven by a desperate plan, Signy expressed her desire to swap appearances with the witch. The witch, intrigued by the request, agreed and used her magical skills to switch their appearances. Now appearing as Signy, the witch went to King Sigurd, who was none the wiser, and spent the night with her, believing her to be his wife. Signy's visit to Sigmund. Meanwhile, the real Signy, now in the guise of the witch, made her way to the underground house of her brother Sigmund. Pretending to have lost her way in the forest, she sought shelter for the night. Sigmund, unaware of her true identity and not wanting to turn away a lone traveler, welcomed her inside. During the evening, Sigmund was struck by her beauty and suggested they share a bed. She agreed, and they spent 3 nights together. Sigmund, seeing only a beautiful woman, was unaware that he was with his own sister. The transformation. Back after their time together, Signy returned home and asked the witch to switch their appearances back. The witch complied, and Signy resumed her life with King Sigurd. The birth of Sinfjotli, In time, Signy gave birth to a son named Sinfjotli. As he grew, it became clear that he was strong and handsome, bearing the distinct features of the Volsung family. Signy, watching him closely, saw in him the potential to be a great warrior and avenger of their lineage. Sinfjotli's trial. When Sinfjotli was nearly 10 years old, Signy decided to send him to Sigmund. But first, she tested his resilience. In a harsh trial, she sewed gloves onto his hands, piercing through the skin. Unlike his half-brothers, who cried out in pain during similar tests, Sinfjotli endured the torment without a sound. Signy then removed the gloves, peeling off the skin along with them, and remarked that this was enough suffering for him. Sinfjotli replied with the stoic strength of his heritage, saying that such pain was trivial for a true Volsung. Sinfjotli and Sigmund's encounter. Sinfjotli then went to Sigmund's underground dwelling. Sigmund, recognizing the boy's strength and potential, welcomed him. To test his capabilities further, Sigmund asked him to knead the meal for their bread while he went to fetch firewood. Upon his return, Sigmund inquired if Sinfjotli had noticed anything unusual in the meal. Sinfjotli replied that he had sensed something alive in the meal as he started kneading, but had mixed it all together regardless. Sigmund laughed and told him, "You won't eat any of this bread tonight, for you've netted the deadliest of worms into it." The special powers of Sigmund and Sinfjotli. Sigmund was so powerful that he could consume poison without suffering any harm, a trait that set him apart as a great hero. Sinfjotli, though resilient, could only withstand poison on his skin, but could not ingest it. This distinction highlighted the unique strengths and vulnerabilities within the Volsung bloodline. Through these trials and tribulations, Sinfjotli began to emerge as a formidable figure in the Volsung Saga, destined to continue the fight against the treachery that plagued his family. 9. The death of King Sigurd and of Signy Sigmund thought Sinfjotli was too young for revenge and wanted to toughen him up first. So during the summer, they traveled through the woods, killing men for their wealth. Sigmund saw a lot of the Volsung spirit in Sinfjotli, even though he believed him to be Sigurd's son. He thought Sinfjotli had the evil heart of his father, but also the Volsung's strength and bravery. However, Sigmund knew Sinfjotli wasn't family because he constantly reminded Sigmund of his wrongs and urged him to kill King Sigurd. One day, while searching for riches in the forest, they came across a house with two men wearing big gold rings who were asleep. These men were actually spellbound shapeshifters who could turn into wolves every 10 days using wolf skins hanging in the house. Sigmund and Sinfjotli put on the wolf skins, but they couldn't take them off. They still acted like themselves, but howled like wolves and understood each other's howls. They ventured into the wilderness, each going their own way, agreeing not to fight more than 7 men at a time. They decided the one who got attacked first would howl to signal the other. "Let's not break this rule," Sigmund said, "because you're young and reckless. Men will see you as easy prey." They split up, and when alone, Sigmund encountered some men and howled like a wolf. Sinfjotli heard it and rushed to help, killing all the men. They then parted ways again. Soon after, Sinfjotli met 11 men and fought valiantly, killing them all. Exhausted, he crawled under an oak tree to rest. Sigmund arrived and said, "Why didn't you call for me?" Sinfjotli replied, "I didn't want to ask for your help to kill 11 men." Sigmund became so angry that he lunged at Sinfjotli, knocking him down and biting him in the throat. Stuck in their wolf forms that day, Sigmund carried the unconscious Sinfjotli back to the house, cursing the wolfskins and blaming them on trolls. The next day, Sigmund saw 2 weasels. One bit the other in the throat, then ran into the bushes, retrieved a leaf and placed it on the wound. The bitten weasel instantly recovered. Inspired by this, Sigmund saw a raven flying with a similar leaf towards him. He took the leaf and put it on Sinfjotli's wound, who immediately healed completely. They returned to their underground dwelling and stayed there until it was time to shed the wolf shapes. They burned the skins and prayed they wouldn't harm anyone again. In their wolf forms, they accomplished many famous deeds within King Sigurd's kingdom. Sigmund believed Sinfjotli was fully prepared when he reached adulthood. Not long after, they decided to avenge Volsung's death. One evening, they reached King Sigurd's dwelling and hid in the porch near the ale barrels. The queen, Signy, also Sigmund's sister, noticed them and was happy to see them. They discussed their plan and agreed on revenge for Volsung that very night. Signy and the king had two young children who were playing with a golden toy on the floor, rolling it back and forth. A golden ring from the toy rolled away towards where Sigmund and Sinfjotli were hiding. One of the children went to find the ring and saw the two big, scary-looking men with helmets and bright armor. He ran back to his father and described what he saw. The king suspected danger, but Signy, overhearing their conversation, grabbed both children and went outside to confront Sigmund and Sinfjotli. "Look," she said, "these youngsters exposed you. Come now and kill them." Sigmund refused, saying, "I will never kill your children for revealing my hiding spot." Sinfjotli, however, showed no hesitation. He drew his sword and killed both children. He then threw their bodies into the hall at King Sigurd's feet. The king stood up and called his men to capture the intruders who had been hiding in the porch all night. Sigmund and Sinfjotli fought bravely, but they were overwhelmed by the many men and eventually taken prisoner. They were bound and thrown into iron shackles, spending the night there. The king contemplated a slow, torturous death for them. At dawn, he ordered a large mound built with a massive stone inside, blocking passage from one side to the other. Sigmund and Sinfjotli were placed on opposite sides, able to hear but not reach each other. As the mound was sealed, Signy secretly provided Sinfjotli with straw containing Sigmund's sword. That night, Sinfjotli told Sigmund they wouldn't need food as the queen had hidden pork in the straw. Discovering the sword, they sawed through the stone, freeing themselves, as the verse goes. Sinfjotli sawed and Sigmund sawed with all their might. The stone was split. Now free in the barrow, Sigmund and Sinfjotli used their newfound freedom to cut through the stone and iron, escaping their confinement. They snuck back to the king's hall while everyone slept. Gathering wood, they set the hall ablaze. Awakened by the smoke and flames, King Sigurd cried out, "Who started this fire that burns me?" Sigmund responded, "It is I, Sigmund, with Sinfjotli, your wife's nephew. We want you to know that not all Volsungs are dead." He offered Signy a chance to escape with him, promising her safety, honor, and compensation for her suffering. Signy, however, revealed a shocking truth. "Think on it," she said. "Have I not remembered King Sigurd's slaying of Volsung? I even ended my own children, judging them unfit to avenge our father. I took on the guise of a witch and came to you in the woods. And now know this. Sinfjotli is the son of both you and me. That's why he's so fierce and brave. He's the offspring of Volsung's son and daughter. This and nothing else is why I orchestrated Sigurd's downfall. Vengeance fueled my actions, and now I have no desire to live any longer. I'd rather die joyfully with King Sigurd, even though marrying him brought me no joy." With that, she kissed Sigmund and Sinfjotli, then walked back into the fire, perishing alongside King Sigurd and his men. Sigmund and Sinfjotli gathered warriors and ships. Sigmund returned to his homeland, driving out the king who had taken over after Volsung's death. He became a powerful and renowned king, known for his wisdom and nobility. He married a woman named Borghild, and they had two sons, Helgi and Hamund. When Helgi was born, magical beings called Norns came and prophesied that he would become the most famous king ever. Arriving home from war at the same time, Sigmund named his son Helgi and bestowed upon him gifts symbolizing future greatness, the land of rings, sunlitten hill, and a sharp shearing sword. He prayed that Helgi would grow into a man of immense fame, a true Volsung descendant. The story continues, detailing how Helgi grew into a brave and beloved leader, excelling in all forms of combat. By the age of 15, he was already commanding armies, with Sinfjotli by his side. Together, the two kinsmen became formidable leaders. Chapter 10. How Helgi, the son of Sigmund, won King Hodbrod and his realm and wedded Sigrun. The tale recounts that Helgi encountered King Hunding, a powerful ruler with vast lands and many men. They engaged in battle, and Helgi fought valiantly, ultimately defeating King Hunding, who fell along with many of his warriors. Helgi's fame grew immensely due to this victory over such a mighty king. Following this, Hunding's sons gathered a large army to avenge their father. A fierce battle ensued, where Helgi fought his way through their ranks to their standard, slaying Hunding's sons, Alf, Eyolf, Herward, and Hagbard, and securing a great victory. After the battle, as Helgi was departing, he encountered a group of exceptionally beautiful women riding in noble attire. One woman among them surpassed all others in beauty. Helgi inquired about her identity, and she introduced herself as Sigrun, daughter of King Hogni. Helgi invited them to return with him, offering them a warm welcome. But Sigrun replied, "We have other tasks ahead, not to drink with you." "And what tasks, daughter of the king?" asked Helgi. She answered, "King Hogni has promised me in marriage to Hodbrod, son of King Granmar. However, I have vowed not to marry him, even if he were no more than a commoner's son, not a king's. But it seems this marriage will happen unless you stand against him with an army, take me away, and challenge him in combat. I would rather be with you than any other king." "Be assured, daughter of the king," said Helgi, "he and I will settle this matter before you are given to him. We will see who prevails over the other, and I pledge my life to this." Afterwards, Helgi sent messengers with money to gather his forces. They assembled at Redberg, and Helgi waited there until a great company arrived from Hedensea, along with a mighty fleet from Norvi Sound. King Helgi summoned Leif, captain of his ships, and asked about the size of his fleet. "It's hard to tell, Lord," replied Leif. "From Norvi Sound alone, there are 12,000 men with nearly as many more elsewhere." King Helgi then directed them into Varin's Firth, but they encountered a fierce storm and monstrous waves that battered their ships as if mountains were colliding. Despite this, Helgi ordered his men not to fear and to keep their sails up high. They narrowly avoided shipwreck before finally making landfall. On the shore, Sigrun, daughter of King Hogni, arrived with a large army and redirected them to a safe harbor called Nippeland. The local people observed this and came down to the shore. Swarin's Cairn, brother of King Hodbrod and lord of the land, called out to them, asking who led such a massive army. Sinfiotli stood up, wearing a gleaming helm and a snowy white byrnie, holding a spear with a banner of renown and a gold-rimmed shield. He spoke boldly to the kings, knowing well how to address them. "Go and tell Hodbrod, once you're done with your tasks, that the Volsungs have arrived. King Helgi is among us, if Hodbrod wishes to find him. Fighting and winning renown is Helgi's joy, while you stay occupied at home." Granmar, furious, responded, "You speak disrespectfully and falsely of chiefs and lords. You must have long been nourished on wolf meat and wolf meat in the wild woods, slaying your own kin. It's a wonder you dare to join good and noble men, you who have drunk the blood of many a cold corpse." Sinfiotli, unshaken, replied, "Your memory seems dim now, but do you not recall when you were a witch on Varinzi, seeking a man, and you chose me above all others? And later you were a Valkyrie in Asgard, nearly causing all men to fight for your favor. I fathered 9 wolf whelps on your body in Lonis, and I was their father." Granmar, trying to regain control, retorted, "You have a great skill in lying, but perhaps you are father of nothing at all, having been castrated by the giantesses of Thrasness. You are the stepson of King Sigurd, accustomed to roaming the wilds and woods with wolfkin. Unlucky was the hand that slew your brothers, earning yourself a vile reputation." Sinfiotli continued, undeterred, "Do you not remember when you were Grani's mare, and I rode you ambling on Braval, and afterwards you were giant Galnir's Gothard?" "Enough of these words," Granmar said, growing weary. "I would rather feed fowls with your flesh than continue this argument." At this, King Helgi intervened. "It would be better and more honorable to fight rather than speak such shameful things. Granmar's sons are not our friends, but they are nonetheless brave men." Granmar then rode off to meet King Hodbrod at Sunfels, riding horses named Svepud and Svegjud. The brothers met in the castle porch, where Granmar informed Hodbrod of the impending war. King Hodbrod, already clad in armor with his helm on, asked, "Who is nearby that makes you so angry?" "Here come the Volsungs," Granmar replied. 12,000 of them are afloat off the coast, and 7,000 are at the island Sok. The largest force is at Grindr, and it seems Helgi and his men are eager for battle." The king decided, "Let us send messages throughout our realm and gather our forces. Let no one who desires battle stay idle at home. Send word to the sons of Ring, King Hogni, and Alf the Old, for they are mighty warriors." The armies gathered at Wolfstone, where fierce fighting ensued. Helgi charged through the enemy ranks, causing many casualties. Eventually, a great company of shield maidens appeared, blazing like flames, led by Sigrun, the king's daughter. Helgi faced King Hodbrod in battle and struck him down under his own banner. Sigrun praised Helgi, saying, "Thank you for your courageous deed. Now we shall share this land, and this is a day of great joy for me. Your honor and renown shall grow for felling such a mighty king." Helgi took control of that realm and ruled there for a long time after marrying Sigrun, achieving great honor and renown, though his tale ends here. Source material. And the woman was fair and lovely and bore him sons of fame. Men called them Haemund and Helgi, and when Helgi first saw light, there came the Norns to his cradle and gave him life full bright, and called him Sunlit Hill, Sharp Sword, and Land of Rings, and bade him be lovely and great, and a joy in the tale of kings. The Poetic Edda. Young Helgi, nurtured in the hall of Hagal, ventured to Hunding's court, where none could ken his purpose bold. Unseen he left his message, a challenge fierce that roused Hunding to pursuit. Valkyries flew o'er the blood-drenched field, eyes fixed on the brave who stood unyielding. Gudrun, battle maiden, her heart caught by Helgi's might, pledged herself to the hero. With Odin's spear, Dag the Oathbreaker struck Helgi, fair of face and bravely met by the mournful wails of Gudrun's tears, each drop a wound anew on his noble chest. Thou weepest, gold-adorned, cruel tears, sun-bright daughter of the south. Ere to sleep thou goest, each one falls bloody on the prince's breast, wet, cold, and piercing with sorrow big. In Valhalla's hall, Helgi rode with pride, Einherjar's leader, his spirit bright. Gudrun, Valkyrie once more, stood by his side, their love renewed as they awaited the night when gods and men would clash in fateful war. The Volsunga Saga. 11. The ending of Sinfjotli, Sigmund's son. The Volsungs returned home, celebrated for their great deeds. Meanwhile, Sinfjotli embarked on new campaigns and encountered an exceptionally beautiful woman whom he desired above all else. However, this woman was also courted by Borghild's brother, the king's wife. They fought over her, and Sinfjotli killed the king in the ensuing conflict. Afterward, he continued to raid far and wide, winning many battles and gaining immense renown and honor among men. By autumn, he returned home with numerous ships and great wealth. He shared his adventures with his father, King Sigmund, who in turn informed the queen. She, displeased, ordered him to leave the realm, pretending she wanted nothing to do with him. However, Sigmund refused to banish his son and offered her compensation in gold and wealth for her brother's life. He had never before paid Wergild for a man's death, but he saw no honor in upholding injustice against a woman. Realizing she could not have her way, she relented, saying, "Do as you wish in this matter, my lord, for it is fitting so." She then organized a grand funeral feast for her brother with the king's assistance, inviting many noble guests. During the feast, Queen Borghild served drinks to the guests, and she approached Sinfjotli with a large horn, saying, "Drink now, dear stepson." He took the horn and looked into it, saying, "No, for this drink is enchanted." Sigmund intervened, "Then give it to me," and he took the horn and drank it all. The queen turned to Sinfjotli again, saying, "Why must others drink your ale for you?" She came a second time with the horn, urging him with many words to drink. Reluctantly, he took the horn and remarked, "Deceit lies in this drink." Upon hearing this, Sigmund exclaimed, "Then give it to me." For a third time, she approached him, goading him to drink if he had the courage of a Volsung. He took the horn again, but said, "There is poison in this." "Let your lips filter it out then, my son," said Sigmund, who was already heavily intoxicated. Sinfjotli drank from the horn and immediately collapsed, dead on the ground. Overwhelmed with grief, Sigmund rose and carried his son's body into the forest until he reached a fjord, where he saw a man in a small boat. The man offered to ferry him across the fjord, but the boat was too small to carry them both at once. So Sinfjotli's corpse was placed in the boat first, while Sigmund walked alongside the shore. Suddenly, the boat and the man vanished from Sigmund's sight. Sigmund returned home, banished the queen, who died shortly afterward. Despite these sorrows, Sigmund continued to rule his kingdom, renowned as the greatest warrior and king of ancient times. King Sigmund's last battle, and of how he must yield up his sword again. King Eylimi was a renowned and mighty ruler, and his daughter Hjordis was esteemed as the fairest and wisest woman of her time. Sigmund heard tales of her beauty and wisdom, considering her as a potential wife, even if no other suitors were in the picture. He journeyed to King Eylimi's court, where a great feast awaited him, provided he came not as an enemy. Messages passed between the kingdoms to ensure this was a peaceful visit, and the feast was held with great pomp, attended by many. King Lingi, son of King Hunding, also arrived at the feast with intentions to woo Hjordis, creating tension as it seemed both kings sought the same prize. Understanding the potential for conflict and trouble, King Eylimi deferred the decision to his daughter, knowing she was wise enough to choose her own husband. "It is a difficult and troubling decision," Hjordis acknowledged, "yet I choose the one of greatest renown, King Sigmund, even though he is advanced in years." Thus she was betrothed to Sigmund, and King Lingi departed. The wedding of Sigmund and Hjordis was celebrated with increasing splendor each passing day. Afterward, Sigmund returned to his realm of Hunland, accompanied by his father-in-law King Eylimi, who entrusted his daughter to Sigmund's care. Meanwhile, King Lingi and his brothers gathered a formidable army to challenge Sigmund, seeking to overcome the Volsung dynasty's pride and power. They marched into Hunland, sending word to Sigmund that they would not ambush him, believing he would not evade them. Sigmund accepted the challenge, mustering his forces, but Hjordis was led into the safety of the woods with a trusted servant and much wealth, awaiting the battle's outcome. The Viking forces disembarked, overwhelming in number. Sigmund and King Eylimi raised their banners, horns sounded the call to battle, and Sigmund blew the same horn his father once possessed, rallying his men with fierce determination despite being vastly outnumbered. The battle raged fiercely. Though aged, Sigmund fought with unparalleled valor, leading from the front. His sword cleaved through shields and mail, and fortune favored him as he escaped injury. Yet, fate turned against him when a mysterious man entered the fray, clad in a blue cloak with a slouched hat, wielding a halberd. This one-eyed warrior clashed directly with Sigmund, whose sword shattered upon striking the halberd, marking the turning point of the battle. The slaughter then shifted against Sigmund's forces. Despite his relentless courage and leadership, he could not stem the tide against overwhelming odds. Inevitably, Sigmund fell in battle alongside King Eylimi and many of their warriors, bringing a tragic end to their valiant stand. 13. The Shards of Gram and Hjordis' journey to King Alf. King Lingi went to the king's residence intending to take the king's daughter with him, but he failed to find either her or any wealth there. He then traveled throughout the entire kingdom, giving his men control over it, believing he had eliminated all the Volsung's relatives and no longer needed to fear them. That night, after the battle, Hjordis walked among the fallen and found King Sigmund. She asked if he could be healed, but he replied, "Many men live even when hope is slim, but my fortune has left me, and I will not allow myself to be healed. Odin does not wish for me to wield a sword again, now that my sword, and his, is broken. I have fought as long as it was his will." Hjordis said, "It would not be a bad thing if you could be healed and avenge my father." The king responded, "That destiny belongs to another man. Look, you are pregnant with a boy. Take good care of him, for he will be the most noble and famous of our lineage. Safeguard the pieces of the sword. From them, a fine sword will be forged named Gram. Our son will carry it and perform many great deeds that time will not diminish. His name will last and be honored as long as the world exists. Let this be enough for you. But now I am tired from my wounds, and I wish to join our ancestors who have passed away." Hjordis stayed with him until he passed away at dawn. Then she saw many ships approaching the shore. She said to her handmaid, "Let's swap clothes, and you will be called by my name, claiming to be the king's daughter." They did exactly that. The Vikings saw the large number of dead and noticed 2 women leaving for the woods. They suspected something significant had happened and disembarked from their ships. The leader of these people was Alf, the son of King Hjalprek of Denmark, who was sailing with his forces along the coast. They entered the battlefield and were astonished by the number of casualties. The king ordered his men to find the women and bring them to him, which they did. He inquired about their identities. Surprisingly, the servant spoke for both of them, recounting the deaths of King Sigmund and King Eylimi, among other great men, and identifying those responsible for the act. Then the king asked if they knew where the king's treasure was hidden, and the servant confidently replied, "It can indeed be said that we know exactly where it is." She then led them to where the treasure was hidden, and they discovered immense wealth with priceless items piled together like never seen before. They carried all of it back to King Alf's ships, with Hjordis and the bondmaid accompanying them. They sailed back to their homeland, discussing how the most renowned kings had fallen on that battlefield. King Alf sat at the helm while the women stayed in the forecastle. He conversed with them and valued their counsel highly. Thus the king returned to his kingdom with great riches, and he himself was a remarkably handsome man. However, upon returning home, his mother, the queen, questioned why the woman who appeared less adorned had fewer rings and lesser attire. "I believe," she said, "that the one whom you've considered less is actually the noblest of the two." He replied, "I too have had my doubts. She hardly seems like a bondmaid. When we first met, she greeted noblemen with dignity. Let us put this to the test." One day while they were drinking, the king sat down with the women and asked, "How do you know when the night grows old if you cannot see the stars?" The bondmaid answered, "I have a sign. When I was young, I used to drink until dawn. Even though I no longer do, I still wake at that time, and that's how I know." The king chuckled and said, "Not very ladylike for a king's daughter." Then he turned to Hjordis and posed the same question. She replied, "My father gave me a small gold ring that grows cold on my finger at daybreak. That is my sign." The king responded, "There's enough gold there where a mere bondmaid wore it. But come now, you've been hidden from me for too long. If you had told me everything from the start, I would have treated you as if we were both children of kings. But now I will treat you even better, for you shall be my wife, and I promise you a fitting dowry when you bear me a child." She then spoke truthfully about herself, and from then on she was held in great honor, esteemed as the most worthy of women. 14. The birth and early life of Sigurd Fafnir's Bane. The tale continues that Hjordis gave birth to a boy who was promptly presented to King Hjalprek. The king was delighted by the sharpness in the child's eyes, declaring that few could ever match him in any way. The boy was baptized and named Sigurd, a name that resonated universally, as none had ever been his equal in growth and beauty. He was raised with great love and honor in King Hjalprek's household. In all the ancient sagas recounting the greatest men and kings, Sigurd always stood out for his strength, courage, noble spirit, and stout heart, qualities with which he was more richly endowed than any man from the northern lands. Sigurd thrived in King Hjalprek's court, beloved by all the children. Through him, Hjordis was promised in marriage to King Alf, with a suitable dowry arranged. Sigurd's foster father was Regin, the son of Hreidmar. He taught Sigurd various arts, including chess, rune lore, and languages, customary for royal sons in those times. One day, Regin asked Sigurd if he knew how much wealth his father had owned and who was now guarding it. Sigurd responded that the kings were responsible for its safekeeping. Regin pressed further, "Do you trust them completely?" Sigurd replied, "They are its custodians until I am able to claim it. They are better suited to protect it than I." Another time, Regin remarked to Sigurd, "It's remarkable that you must serve the kings as a stable boy and act like a common servant." "No," Sigurd retorted, "that's not the case. I have my way in all things, and whatever I wish is readily granted." "Then," said Regin, "ask them for a horse." "Yes," said Sigurd confidently, "and I shall have one when I desire it." Later, Sigurd approached the king, who asked, "What can we grant you?" "I would like a horse," Sigurd answered, "for my enjoyment." "Choose any horse you wish," the king replied, "and anything else among my possessions that you desire." The following day, Sigurd ventured into the forest and encountered an elderly man with a long beard, whom he did not recognize. The old man inquired about his intentions. "I am selecting a horse for myself," Sigurd replied. "Come with me and offer your advice." "Very well," said the old man. "Let's proceed and guide them to the river known as Bizzletarn." They did so, leading the horses into the deep part of the river. All the horses swam back to shore, except one. Sigurd selected that horse for himself. It was gray in color, young, large, and exceptionally beautiful. No one had ever ridden him before. Then the gray-bearded man spoke. "This horse comes from Sleipnir's lineage. He must be cared for attentively, for he will be the best of all horses." With that, the old man disappeared. So Sigurd named the horse Grani, deeming him the finest horse in the world. The old man he encountered was none other than Odin himself. Regin addressed Sigurd again, saying, "Your riches are inadequate, and it pains me to see you wandering like a commoner's son. But I can guide you to a place where immense wealth can be gained, along with great renown and honor." Sigurd inquired about the location and its guardian. Regin replied, "His name is Fafnir, and he lies not far from here on the desolate Nida Heath. Once there, you will behold more gold amassed in one place than you could ever dream of. No one would desire more treasure, not even the most aged and illustrious kings." "I am young," said Sigurd, "but I am aware of this dragon and his fearsome reputation. No one dares to challenge him." Regin countered, "No, it's not as daunting as it's made out to be. He is no larger or more fearsome than other dragons, despite the exaggerated tales. Your forebears, the Volsungs, would have seen him similarly, yet you, despite being of their lineage, may not possess their same valor and courage." Sigurd replied, "Perhaps I lack their bravery and skill, but you need not brand me a coward when I have just reached manhood. Why do you press me so eagerly toward this?" Regin responded, "There is a tale behind it that I must unfold." "Then tell me," said Sigurd, source material. "In the house of the Helper there dwelt a man, beardless and low of stature, of visage pinched and wan. So exceeding old was Regin that no son of man could tell in what year of the days passed over he came to that land to dwell." The Poetic Edda. 15. Regin's tale of his brothers and of the gold called Andvari's hoard. Regin began, "My father's name was Hreidmar, a powerful and wealthy man. His first son was named Fafnir, the second Otter, and I was the youngest and least in both strength and character. However, I talent for working with iron, silver, and gold, creating objects of some value. Otter, my brother, had a different skill. He was an exceptional fisherman, renowned above all others. By day, he took on the form of an otter and lived in the river, bringing fish to the bank in his mouth. This was greatly beneficial to him, as he mostly stayed in his otter form, coming home to eat alone and sleep, since on dry land he could not see anything. Fafnir, on the other hand, was the largest and fiercest of us all, claiming everything as his own. Now," continued Regin, "there was a dwarf named Andvari who dwelled in a waterfall known as Andvari's Falls, in the form of a pike. Many fish swam in the falls, and Otter, my brother, often entered the water to catch fish and bring them ashore one by one. One day, Odin, Loki, and Honir came across Andvari's Falls. Otter had caught a salmon and was sleeping on the river bank. Loki threw a stone at Otter, killing him. The gods were satisfied with their catch and proceeded to skin the otter. That evening they arrived at Hreidmar's house and showed him what they had done. Hreidmar seized them and demanded a ransom. They must fill the otter's skin with gold and cover it entirely with red gold. So Loki was sent to gather the gold. He went to Ran, obtained her net, and used it to capture Andvari in pike form. Then Loki said, "What fish swims so strong in the river's flow, yet lacks the sense to beware? Your head you must buy from the depths of hell, and bring me the gleaming gold waters." Andvari replied, "Andvari they call me, Oin my father. Many falls have I crossed by a Norn of ill luck. This life was laid on me, to wander wet paths forever." Loki saw Andvari's gold, and after taking all the treasure, there was only one ring left. Loki took that ring too. Enraged, the dwarf Andvari retreated into the rocks and cursed the ring and all the gold, declaring that they would bring ruin to anyone who possessed them. The gods then traveled with the treasure to Hreidmar. They were required to fill an otter skin completely with gold and cover it entirely. Once the gods had done this, Hreidmar inspected it and found one hair from the otter's muzzle still visible. He demanded they cover that hair as well. To comply, Odin took the ring, known as Andvari's loom, from his hand and used it to cover the hair. At this, Loki recited a verse. "You have enough gold, a great weregild indeed, that spares my life. But you and your son are doomed to misfortune. This gold will bring ruin to you both." Afterwards, as Regin continued his tale, he said, "Fafnir killed our father Hreidmar, and I received none of the treasure. Fafnir became so consumed by greed that he transformed into a fearsome dragon, hoarding the treasure and allowing no one to have any part of it. Meanwhile, I went to the king's court and became his master blacksmith. That is how I lost my father's legacy and the compensation for my brother's death. This is why gold is called Ottergild, stemming from this tragic story." Sigurd then responded, "You have indeed lost much, and your family has been plagued by misfortune. Now, forge me a sword with your skill, one that is unparalleled, so I can perform great deeds if I have the courage. I need it to slay this formidable dragon." Regin assured him, "Trust me in this. With that very sword, you shall kill Fafnir." Source material, excerpts from the Poetic Edda and the Volsunga Saga. 16. The welding together of the shards of the sword Gram Regin crafted a sword and presented it to Sigurd. Sigurd took the sword, examined it, and remarked, "Look at your craftsmanship, Regin." With that, he struck the sword against an anvil, but it shattered. Disappointed, Sigurd cast it aside and demanded a better sword. Regin returned to his forge, forged another sword, and brought it to Sigurd, who scrutinized it closely. Regin commented, "Perhaps this one meets your satisfaction, though you are quite exacting in matters of smithing." However, Sigurd tested the sword, and it broke like the first. Frustrated, he confronted Regin. "Are you as deceitful and unreliable as your kin?" Sigurd then visited his mother. She welcomed him warmly, and they spent time together conversing and sharing drinks. Sigurd asked her, "Is it true that King Sigmund entrusted you with the fragments of the esteemed sword Gram?" "It is true," she confirmed. "Then give them to me," Sigurd demanded. "I need them." Recognizing his resolve, his mother acknowledged his destined path to great renown and handed over the shattered sword pieces. Sigurd brought the fragments to Regin and instructed him to forge a new sword from them. Though annoyed, Regin complied and carried the pieces to his smithy. Grumbling to himself about Sigurd's deep involvement in smithing affairs, he nevertheless set about forging a new sword. When Regin emerged from the forge with the sword, flames danced along its edges. He presented it to Sigurd and said, "If this sword fails, I know not how to forge one that won't." Sigurd struck the sword against the anvil, splitting it all the way down to its base without a crack. Impressed, he praised the sword and then went to the river. Taking a lock of wool, he tossed it into the current against the flow. When the wool touched the sword, it split cleanly in two. Delighted with the sword's prowess, Sigurd returned home. Regin then asked, "Now that I have forged this sword for you, will you fulfill your promise and confront Fafnir?" "Indeed, I will keep my word," Sigurd affirmed, "but first I must avenge my father." As Sigurd matured, he became ever more beloved by all. Everyone, even the children, cherished him deeply. 17. The Prophecy of Grifir. There was a man named Grifir, who was Sigurd's uncle, his mother's brother. Shortly after Sigurd had his sword forged, he went to visit Grifir. Grifir was known to possess the ability to foresee future events and knew the destinies of men. Sigurd earnestly sought to learn from Grifir about how his own life would unfold. Grifir was reluctant to speak at first, but after Sigurd's persistent pleading, he finally revealed to Sigurd the entirety of his life and fate, just as it would later happen. Once Grifir had told him everything, Sigurd returned home. Not long after, Sigurd encountered Regin. Regin said to him, "You must now fulfill your promise and slay Fafnir." Sigurd replied, "I will complete that task, but first there is another duty I must attend to. I must avenge the death of King Sigmund and my other kinsmen who perished in their final battle." 18. Sigurd's avenging of Sigmund his father. "I have stayed with you for a while now, and I owe you thanks and gratitude for your great hospitality, many gifts, and all the honor you've given me. But now I must leave this land and face the sons of Hunding to show them that the Volsungs are not all gone. I would also ask for your support in this endeavor." The kings assured Sigurd that they would provide him with everything he needed. Consequently, a great army was assembled, and every preparation was made with utmost care. Ships were readied, and all the war gear prepared so that his expedition would be grand and splendid. Sigurd himself took command of the dragon prow ship, the largest and most magnificent of the fleet. Their sails were beautifully crafted and a sight to behold. They set sail with favorable winds. After a few days at sea, a fierce storm arose, and the waves appeared as if they were foaming with blood. Despite this, Sigurd ordered that no sails be taken in, no matter how torn they might get, and instead to raise them higher than before. As they sailed past a rocky headland, a man hailed them from the shore, asking who led the fleet. They replied that it was Sigurd, son of Sigmund, the most renowned of all the young men of their time. The man responded, "Everyone says the same about him, that no prince can compare to him. I would like you to lower your sails on some of the ships and take me aboard." They asked him for his name, and he sang, "Nikar is my name. When I cheered Hugin and went into battle, bright son of the Volsungs, now you may call me the man on the cliff top, Feng or Fjolnir. I wish to join you." They sailed to the shore and brought the man aboard. Then Sigurd spoke, as the song recounts, "Tell me this, O Nikar, since you know well the fate of gods and the fortunes of men, what are the best omens for us when the swords clash and the battle rages?" Nikar replied, "Many are the good omens, if men only knew them. When swords are clashing, I see the raven, dark-winged and favored, a good sign for the warrior. The second good omen, when you go on a long journey, well prepared, it's a good sign to see two men standing eager for fame at the entrance. A third good omen, hearing the wolf's howl in the ash trees promises good fortune when you engage in battle if you see these things ahead. No man in battle should turn his face away from the moon's sister, shining late and low, for victory comes to those who look steadfastly through the midst of the swordplay and best shape their ranks. Great is the trouble of stumbling feet when you march to battle, for on both sides stand the Dizzer, female spirits of fate, wishing and scheming for your wounding. Each warrior should be well-groomed and clean, and not miss breakfast, for who can predict the return of the evening, and it's disgraceful to fall before fate, hungry and groveling." After the storm subsided, Sigurd and his fleet continued their journey until they landed in the realm of Hunding's sons. At this point, Fjolnir disappeared. Once ashore, they unleashed their fury, wielding fire and sword. They killed many and burned down their homes, leaving a path of destruction in their wake. A large group of people fled in terror to King Lingi, reporting that a fearsome army had invaded, causing unprecedented chaos and devastation. They mentioned that the sons of King Hunding had mistakenly believed they would never have to fear the Volsungs again. However, Sigurd, the son of Sigmund, was leading this army. Upon hearing this, King Lingi sent out a call to arms across his realm. Rather than retreat, he gathered all who would aid him and prepared for battle. He and his brothers assembled a formidable army and confronted Sigurd's forces. A fierce battle ensued, with spears and arrows filling the air, axes striking hard, shields splintering, and armor tearing. Helmets were shattered, skulls split, and many fell lifeless to the ground. As the battle raged on, Sigurd stepped forward, bearing the great sword Gram. He cut down men and horses alike, advancing through the thickest of the fighting with blood covering his arms up to the shoulders. Everyone fell back before him, as no helmet or armor could withstand his blows. His presence in battle was unparalleled. The fight continued for a long time, with many men dying and the combat growing ever more intense. Despite their efforts, the sons of Hunding's army couldn't overcome Sigurd's forces. Countless warriors from Hunding's line were slain, their numbers too great to count. Eventually, as Sigurd fought at the forefront, the sons of Hunding came directly against him. Sigurd struck down King Lingi with a powerful blow, cleaving through his helmet, head, and armor. He then killed j.r.r, Lingi's brother, splitting him in two, and went on to slay all the remaining sons of Hunding and the majority of their men. Victorious, Sigurd returned home, laden with wealth and honored for his triumph. Great feasts were held in his honor to celebrate his return. Soon after his arrival, Regin approached Sigurd and said, "Now that you have avenged your father and your kin, will you keep your promise and go to slay Fafnir?" Sigurd replied, "We will indeed fulfill our promise, as we have always intended. It has never left our thoughts." 19. The Slaying of the Worm. Fafnir, Sigurd, and Regin rode across the heath, following the path where Fafnir the dragon used to crawl when he went to drink from the water. People say the cliff along which he lay while drinking was about 30 fathoms, 180 feet high. Then Sigurd spoke, "Regin, you said this dragon was no bigger than other serpents, but the track he leaves is incredibly large." Regin replied, "Dig yourself a hole and sit in it. When the dragon comes down to the water, strike him in the heart, and you will kill him and win great fame." But Sigurd asked, "What will happen to me if I am caught in the dragon's blood?" Regin retorted, "What use is giving you advice if you're afraid of everything? You are nothing like your kin in bravery." Sigurd then rode across the heath while Regin, filled with fear, went away. Sigurd began to dig a pit. While he was working, an old man with a long beard approached and asked what he was doing. Sigurd explained his plan. The old man replied, "You are following bad advice. Instead, dig several pits and let the blood run into them. Sit in one of these pits, and from there, thrust your sword into the dragon's heart." Then the old man vanished. Sigurd followed his advice and dug several pits as shown. As the dragon came down to drink, the ground trembled, and he snorted venom all the way before him. But Sigurd did not tremble or fear the dragon's roaring. When the dragon crawled over the pits, Sigurd thrust his sword under its left shoulder, driving it in up to the hilt. Then Sigurd leapt from the pit and withdrew his sword, his arm covered in blood up to the shoulder. When the mighty dragon realized he was mortally wounded, he thrashed about with his head and tail, destroying everything in his path. As Fafnir lay dying, he asked, "Who are you? Who is your father, and what is your lineage that you dared to attack me?" Sigurd answered, "My lineage is unknown. I am called a noble beast. I have no father or mother, and I came here all alone." Fafnir responded, "If you have no father or mother, what miraculous birth brought you into being? Although you refuse to tell me your name on this day of my death, I know you are lying." Sigurd then said, "My name is Sigurd, and my father was Sigmund." Fafnir asked, "Who urged you to do this, and why did you choose to attack me? Had you never heard of the fear I inspired and how terrifying my presence is? You must have had a bold father, young warrior." Sigurd replied, "A courageous heart drove me to this, and a strong hand wielded this sharp sword, which you now know well. As the saying goes, rarely does a brave old man have a cowardly son." Fafnir said, "Well, I know that if you had grown up among your kin, you might have been skilled at handling your anger. But it's even more astonishing that you, a captive taken in war, had the courage to confront me. Most captives wouldn't dare." Sigurd replied, "Are you accusing me of being far from my family? Even though I was a captive, I was never chained. God knows you found me free enough." Fafnir responded, "You take my words in anger, but listen, for this gold I owned will bring about your end as well." Sigurd said, "We'd like to keep all our wealth until the end of days, but everyone dies once." Fafnir continued, "You will rarely follow my advice, but be warned that you will meet your end if you travel carelessly over the sea. Stay on dry land and wait for calm waters." Then Sigurd asked, "Tell me, Fafnir, if you are so wise, who are the Norns that determine the fate of all men?" Fafnir answered, "There are many Norns, and they come from different origins. Some are of the kin of the Aesir, some are of the elves, and some are daughters of Dvalin, the dwarf." Sigurd then asked, "What is the name of the island where Surt and the Aesir mix and mingle the water of the sword?" Fafnir replied, "That place is called Unshapen." Fafnir then said, "My brother Regin has orchestrated my end, and it pleases me that he will also bring about yours because that's what he desires." He continued, "I once carried a face of terror before all people after I took over my brother's inheritance. I spat poison on all sides so that no one dared come near me, and I feared no weapon. I never faced so many men that I felt outmatched, for everyone was afraid of me." Sigurd responded, "Few can win by relying on that face of terror, because whoever faces many will one day find that no one person is the mightiest of all." Fafnir advised, "I suggest you take your horse and ride away quickly, because it often happens that even a dying man can seek revenge." Sigurd answered, "I won't follow your advice. Instead, I will ride to your lair and claim your vast treasure." Fafnir warned, "Go then, and you will find enough gold to last your lifetime. But that gold will be your doom, and the doom of anyone who possesses it." Sigurd stood up and said, "I would rather ride home and lose all that wealth if it meant I would never die. But every brave and honest man will want to hold on to wealth until his final day. As for you, Fafnir, suffer in your end until death and hell take you." With that, Fafnir died. 20. The slaying of Regin, son of Hreidmar. Afterward, Regin approached Sigurd and said, "Hail, lord and master. You have achieved a noble victory by slaying Fafnir, an act that no one dared to attempt before. This deed will be renowned as long as the world endures." Regin stood silently for a moment, then spoke with a heavy heart. "You have killed my brother, and I cannot deny my part in this." Sigurd took his sword, Gram, and wiped it clean. He replied to Regin, "You were far away when I slew the dragon. Using this sword with my own strength, I faced the full might of the dragon alone, while you lay hidden, unaware of the battle's outcome." Regin countered, Without the sword I forged, neither you nor any man could have defeated Fafnir. Sigurd retorted, in battle, a brave heart often surpasses a sharp sword. Regin, still burdened with guilt, said, You have slain my brother, and I must bear some responsibility for this act. At that moment, Sigurd cut out Fafnir's heart with the sword Ridil. Regin drank some of Fafnir's blood and asked a small favor, Roast the heart over the fire and give me part of it to eat. Sigurd roasted the heart on a stick. As the blood bubbled out, he touched it with his finger and then tasted it. Suddenly he could understand the language of birds. Nearby, woodpeckers chattered in the thicket. One bird remarked, Sigurd sits roasting Fafnir's heart for another when he should eat it himself to gain supreme wisdom. Another warned, Regin plans to deceive the man who trusts him. A third advised, Sigurd should slay Regin and claim all the treasure and wisdom for himself. A fourth added, he should act now, for danger lurks where one least expects. A fifth bird exclaimed, Sigurd is unwise to spare one who plots against him. Lastly, the sixth bird concluded, it is wise to kill Regin and take the treasure. Sigurd declared, Regin will never be the end of me. Both brothers share the same fate. With that, he drew Gram and beheaded Regin. Sigurd then heard the woodpeckers sing. The first bird sang, Bind the bright red rings, Sigurd. Fear not, for many things are true. A fair maiden I know, she's fairest of all, surrounded by gold, she waits for your call. The second bird sang, Green are the paths that lead to Juki's hall, where fate reveals to those who heed the call. There dwells a king, his daughter fair, Sigurd. Your gold shall win her care. The third bird sang, On Hinfell's high a hall does stand, with flames that reach across the land. Wise men of old built this grand site, with gleaming gold, a marvel of light. The fourth bird sang, On the mountain sleeps a maiden, brave and bold, lulled by sleep's embrace, her story yet untold. Odin placed a thorn to guard her fair form, she waits for a hero, to break her sleep's norm. Sigurd then ate a piece of Fafnir's heart and kept the rest. He mounted his horse and followed Fafnir's trail to his lair. The entrance was open, its doors and beams of iron, deep in the earth. There, Sigurd found a vast hoard of gold, the sword Rodi, the helm of awe, the gold byrnie, and many other treasures. He gathered so much gold that it would take 2 or 3 horses to carry it all. Loading it onto his horse, Grani, he found the horse unwilling to move. Understanding Grani's hesitation, Sigurd mounted him and spurred him onward. Grani galloped away effortlessly despite the heavy load. 21. The Sleeping Warrior. Maiden Sigurd rode for a long time along distant roads until he reached Hinfell. From there, he journeyed south to the land of the Franks. As he neared the mountains, he saw a great light ahead of him, like a fire burning and flaming up to the heavens. He approached and found a castle surrounded by a wall of shields with a banner flying from its highest point. Sigurd entered the castle and saw someone lying there asleep, fully armored. He removed the helmet from the sleeper's head and discovered it was not a man, but a woman. She was wearing a mailcoat that clung to her body as if it were part of her skin. Sigurd tore the mailcoat from the collar downwards and then the sleeves, with his sword biting into it as if it were cloth. Sigurd then said that she had been asleep for too long. The woman awoke and asked, What great force has managed to tear my mailcoat and rouse me from my slumber? As the song goes, What pierced my mail, why breaks my sleep away, who has turned from me my pale torment? She continued, Is it Sigurd, son of Sigmund, who comes here with Fafnir's helm on his head and Fafnir's bane in his hand? Sigurd replied, Sigmund's son, with Sigurd's sword, just now rent down the raven's wall. Indeed, it is of the Volsungkin who have done this deed. I have heard you are the daughter of a mighty king, renowned for your beauty and wisdom. Now I will test the truth of these tales. Then Brynhild sang, Long have I slept and slumbered long, the woes of mankind are many and long. By Odin's might I lay helpless, bound in the spells of slumber. Hail to the day returned, hail sons of daylight, hail to you dark night and your daughter. Look down kindly upon us, sitting here in solitude, and grant us the gain we seek. Hail to the Aesir and the gentle Asinir, hail to the earth full of plenty. We seek fair words, wise hearts, and healing hands while life endures. Brynhild continued, 2 kings fought. One was Helm Gunnar, an old warrior favored by Odin for victory, and the other was Agnar, brother of Odi. I struck down Helm Gunnar in battle. In vengeance, Odin pricked me with a sleep thorn and decreed that I would never win another victory and be given away in marriage. But I swore that I would never wed anyone who knew the name of fear. Sigurd then asked, "Teach me the knowledge of great matters." She replied, "You may already know more than I, but I will teach you, and gladly so, if my skills can bring you any pleasure, whether in runes or other deep matters. But first, let us share a drink, and may the gods grant us a good day. May you gain wisdom and fame from our words, and may you remember what we discuss hereafter." Brynhild then filled a cup and gave it to Sigurd, offering him a drink of love. She spoke, "Beer I bring to you, fair fruit of the battle clash, strongly mixed, mingled with fame, overflowing with bright songs and profound runes, wise words, sweet words, speech of great deeds. Learn the runes of war if you wish to be mighty. Carve them on the hilt of a hardened sword, some on the blade's back, some on its shining side, twice inscribed Tyr's name within. Sea runes are good in need, to save the ship for the safety of the sea steed. Carve them on the stern and on the rudder blade and light a fire on the shaved oar. No matter how high the waves or how blue beneath, safely you will come home from the sea. Word runes you should know, if you wish that no man should repay grief for the grief you gave. Win them, weave them, cast them all around you at the assembly where people gather when you seek full justice. Know the wisdom of ale runes, if you wish that another's wife should not betray your trusting heart. Carve them on the mead horn on the back of each hand, and mark an N upon your nail. Be careful with ale, guard it from all harm, lay leek in the liquor, then I know for sure you will never drink mead with malicious ingredients. Gather help runes. If you want the skill to deliver a child from a struggling mother, carve them in your palms, wrap them around the joints, call on the good folk for aid. Learn the wisdom of bow runes. If you love leechcraft and wish to understand the lore of wounds, carve them on the bark, on the buds of trees whose branches face eastward. Use thought runes. If you want to be the fairest souled and wisest among men, these were interpreted, first cut, first taken to heart by Rapt. They were carved on the shield that stands before the shining god, on the ear of early waking, on the hoof of all-knowing, on the wheel that turns under Rognir's chariot, on Sleipnir's jaw, on the traces of the sled, on the bear's rough paws, and on Bragi's tongue, on the wolf's claws, and on the eagle's beak, on bloody wings and the bridge's end, on open hands and paths of compassion, on glass and on gold and on fair silver, in wine and in wort and the seat of the witch, on Gungnir's point and Grani's chest, on the Norn's nail and the owl's beak. All these were carved, shaven and shaped, mixed with holy mead and sent upon wide ways. Some rest with the elves, some remain with the Aesir or with the wise Vanir, some still hold the sons of men. These are the book runes, and the runes of help, the ale runes and the runes of great power. Whosoever may use them well, unconfused, unharmed, they are wholesome to have, thrive with them, when you have learned their lore until the gods end your days. Now you must choose as the choice is given, the root and branch of sharp steel, choose song or silence, consider each in your heart, all harm has been guarded against. Sigurd then answered, I will never flee, even if you foresee my doom, I was not born to cower, I will hold your dear counsel, close to my heart, as long as I live. Sigurd spoke then, surely no wiser woman can be found in the entire world than you. Yes, yes, teach me even more of your wisdom. Brynhild responded, it is fitting that I follow your will and share more wise counsel with you for the sake of your request and your wisdom. Be kind to your friends and family, and do not hold grudges for their wrongdoings against you. Be patient and forgiving, and you will earn long-lasting praise from others. Be wary of dangerous things, a maiden's love and a married woman. Often, trouble comes from such entanglements. Do not let foolish people at crowded gatherings disturb your peace of mind. They often speak worse than they know. Do not let their insults trouble you or make you believe you are as bad as they say. Deal with them another day and give them their due for their ugly words. If you travel through dangerous places, be vigilant. Do not seek shelter too close to the road, even if you are caught in the dark, for there often lurk evil creatures that seek to mislead travelers. Do not be tempted by the charms of fair women you meet at feasts, so that thoughts of them keep you awake and restless. Do not draw them close with kisses or sweet words of love. If you hear foolish words from a drunken man, do not argue with him while he is drunk and senseless. Many sorrows and even death can come from such disputes. Fight your enemies in open battle, but do not let yourself be burned in your own house. Never swear false oaths. The penalty for breaking a solemn promise is severe and grim. Show respect to the dead, whether they died of sickness or at sea. Treat their bodies with care and consideration. Do not trust someone whose father, brother, or close kin you have killed, even if they are young, for often a wolf grows from a cub. Be cautious of the schemes of your friends. I have little skill to foresee the paths of your life, yet it would be wise to avoid enmity from the family of your wife. Sigurd replied, No one among mankind can be found wiser than you. Therefore I swear that I will have you as my own, for you are very dear to my heart. Brynhild answered, I would choose you above all others, even if I could choose from all the sons of men. With that, they both pledged their troth to each other. 22. Sigurd's splendor and arrival at Limdale. Sigurd rode away, his shield layered with intricate designs and glowing with red gold. It was adorned with the image of a dragon, dark brown above and bright red below. His helm, saddle, and coat of armor bore the same dragon motif, and he wore a golden mail coat. All his weapons were crafted from gold. The dragon image on all his gear had a purpose. It marked him as the legendary hero who had slain the great dragon Fafnir, as known by the Vorings. His gold and brown armor and weapons highlighted his supreme nobility and manners, setting him apart from other men. Whenever stories of the greatest heroes and chiefs were told, Sigurd was always mentioned first. His fame spread across all lands north of the Greek seas and was destined to be remembered as long as the world lasted. Sigurd's appearance was striking. His hair was a golden red, flowing in great locks, and his beard was thick, short, and of the same color. His face was broad and high-boned with a prominent nose. His eyes were so sharp that few dared to meet his gaze. His shoulders were as broad as two men's, and his body was perfectly proportioned in height and breadth. A sign of his impressive height was that when he walked through fields of fully grown rye with his 7-span-long sword, Graham, the sword's scabbard would brush the tops of the standing corn. Yet, his strength surpassed even his size. He wielded his sword with skill, cast spears, shot arrows, held his shield with ease, bent bows, rode horses, and excelled in all the deeds he learned in his youth. Sigurd was wise in understanding things yet to come, and he knew the language of all birds, which meant he was rarely taken by surprise. He was eloquent, and whenever he chose to speak, he did so with such persuasion that everyone believed his words to be the absolute truth. He delighted in helping his people, proving his strength in great deeds, taking wealth from his enemies and giving it to his friends. Sigurd never lost heart and feared nothing. Sigurd continued his journey until he reached a grand and beautiful dwelling ruled by a mighty chief named Heimir. Heimir's wife was Brynhild's sister, Beckhild. Unlike Brynhild, who wore armor and went to war, Beckhild stayed at home and mastered the arts of craftsmanship, hence her name. Heimir and Beckhild had a son named Alswid, known as the most courteous of men. As Sigurd approached, the people there stopped their activities to marvel at him, for such a man they had never seen before. They went to greet him warmly, and Alswid invited him to stay and enjoy their hospitality. Sigurd accepted the invitation gladly. The people quickly established his quarters and carried his treasures of gold from his horse. Many marvels were in his possession, items of great value and rarely seen. Fine armor, helmets, mighty rings, large golden cups, and various war weapons. Sigurd stayed there for a long time, held in high honor. News of his heroic deed of slaying the dreadful dragon spread far and wide. Together they enjoyed great times, remaining loyal to each other. They spent their days preparing their weapons, crafting arrows, and flying their falcons. 23. Sigurd sees Brynhild at Hlimdal. In those days, Brynhild, Heimir's foster daughter, returned to his home. She sat in her chamber with her maidens, excelling in handiwork more than any other woman. She was weaving cloth with gold threads, depicting the great deeds of Sigurd, the slaying of the dragon, the acquisition of its treasure, and the death of Regin. One day, Sigurd rode into the woods with his hawk, hound, and a group of men. When he returned home, his hawk flew up to a high tower and perched on a window. Sigurd went to retrieve it and saw a beautiful woman sitting inside. He recognized her as Brynhild and was struck by both her beauty and the splendid embroidery she was working on. Though he went back into the hall, he found no joy in the games and activities of his companions. Alswyd, noticing Sigurd's discontent, asked, "Why are you so unhappy? It troubles us, your friends, to see you like this. Why do you not keep to your cheerful ways? Even your hawks and your horse, Grani, seem downcast. How long will it be before you regain your joy?" Sigurd replied, "Good friend, listen to what weighs on my mind. When my hawk flew up to a certain tower, I went after it and saw a beautiful woman. She was working on golden needlework, illustrating my past deeds and those yet to come." Alswyd said, "You have seen Brynhild, the daughter of Budli, the greatest of great women." "Indeed," said Sigurd. "But how did she come to be here?" Alswyd explained, "There was little time between the arrival of you both." Sigurd reflected, "Not many days ago, I knew her as the finest woman in the world." Alswyd cautioned, "Do not fixate on one woman, especially being such a remarkable man as you are. It is a hard life to pine for what we cannot have." Sigurd declared, "I will meet her and win her love to match mine. I will give her a golden ring as a token." Alswyd advised, "No one has ever been allowed to sit beside her, nor has she ever given a drink to anyone. She is devoted to the life of a warrior and seeks all kinds of glory." Sigurd responded, "We cannot know for sure if she will accept or reject us, or if she will allow me to sit with her." The next day, Sigurd went to Brynhild's chamber, while Alswyd stood outside, fitting arrows to his bow. Sigurd greeted her, "Hello, fair and noble lady, how are you?" Brynhild replied, "I am well. My family and friends are alive, but who can say what fortune will bring to the end of our days?" Sigurd sat beside her, and 4 maidens entered, carrying large golden goblets filled with the finest wine, standing before them. Brynhild remarked, "This seat is reserved for few, except perhaps for my father." Sigurd responded, "Yet it is granted to one who pleases me well." The chamber was adorned with the finest tapestries, and the floor was covered with rich cloth. Sigurd spoke, "It has come to pass just as you promised." "Welcome here," Brynhild said, rising with her maidens. They brought the golden goblet to Sigurd, offering him a drink. He reached out, taking the goblet in her hand, drawing her down beside him. He put his arms around her neck, kissed her, and said, "You are the fairest ever born." Brynhild warned, "It is wiser not to entrust your faith and promises to a woman, for they often break what they vow." Sigurd replied, "The best day of our lives would be the one where we make each other happy." Brynhild answered, "It is not destined for us to stay together. I am a shield maiden, wearing a helm like the war kings. I often help them, and I do not despise the battle." Sigurd protested, "What joy can life bring if we do not live together? This inner pain is harder to bear than the blow of a sharp sword." Brynhild responded, "I shall gaze upon the war king's armies, but you will marry Gudrun, the daughter of Juki." Sigurd declared, "What princess could deceive me? I am not of 2 minds about this. I swear by the gods that I will have you for my own or no woman at all." Brynhild spoke similarly. Sigurd thanked her for her words and gave her a golden ring. They swore their oaths anew, and he returned to his men, spending his days with them in great happiness. 24. The Dream of Gudrun, daughter of Juki. In the realm south of the Rhine, there ruled a king named Juki. He had 3 sons, Gunnar, Hogni, and Guttorm, and a daughter named Gudrun, who was renowned as the fairest of maidens. Juki's children surpassed those of other kings in both prowess and grace. While his sons were often at war, earning great fame through their deeds, Gudrun remained a beacon of beauty and virtue at home. Juki's wife, Grimhild, was known as a wise and cunning woman. King Budli, mightier than Juki despite their shared power, had a son named Atli. Atli, the brother of Brynhild, was a fierce and imposing man, tall, dark, and formidable in appearance. Despite his grim demeanor, he was noble in bearing and unmatched in battle. The Jukings thrived in those days, their happiness largely due to their remarkable children, who were celebrated throughout the lands. One day, Gudrun confided in her maidens, expressing that she had no joy in her heart. A concerned woman asked her why she felt such sorrow. Gudrun replied, "Grief has come to me in my dreams, and it weighs heavily on my heart. Since you ask, I will tell you of it." "Share your dream with me," the woman urged, "for sometimes dreams merely predict the weather." Gudrun shook her head. No, it is more than weather. I dreamed of having a beautiful hawk perched on my wrist, its feathers gleaming with gold. The woman interpreted, Many have spoken of your beauty, wisdom, and kindness. Perhaps this dream signifies a king's son who awaits you. Gudrun continued, In my dream, nothing was as precious to me as that hawk. I would have given up all my wealth rather than lose it. The woman smiled. Then the man you shall marry will be the most admirable, and you will love him deeply. Gudrun sighed. It troubles me that I do not know who he will be. Let us go to Brynhild. She might be able to interpret my dream. With that, Gudrun and her maidens dressed in fine garments and adorned themselves with gold. They traveled to Brynhild's hall, which was set high on a hill and decorated with gold. As their approach was seen, Brynhild was informed that a company of women in gilded wagons was heading towards the castle. That must be Gudrun, the daughter of Juki, Brynhild said. I dreamed of her last night. Let us go out to greet her. No woman more beautiful could visit our home. Brynhild and her attendants went out to meet Gudrun and welcomed her warmly. They all entered the splendidly decorated hall, which was adorned with silver vessels and luxurious cloths. Everyone in the hall attended to their needs, and they enjoyed various entertainments together. Yet Gudrun remained somewhat silent. Brynhild noticed this and said, It is a shame to see you disheartened. Please do not let your sadness dampen our spirits. Let us talk and find joy in discussing the mighty deeds of great kings. Gudrun agreed. A good idea. Let us do so. Which kings do you consider the greatest of all? Brynhild replied, The sons of Haki, and also Hagbard. They achieved many renowned feats in battle. Gudrun responded, Indeed, they were great men of noble fame. But Sigurd took one of their sisters and burned the other along with her home. They were slow to avenge that deed. Why do you not mention my brothers, who are considered among the greatest men today? Brynhild acknowledged. They are certainly men of good promise, though they have yet to fully prove themselves. However, there is one I know who surpasses them all, Sigurd, the son of King Sigmund. Even as a youth, he slew the sons of Hunding and avenged his father and his grandfather, Ailimi. Gudrun inquired, What proof do you have of his greatness? Brynhild recounted, His mother, Hjordis, found King Sigmund among the dead, grievously wounded. She tried to tend to his wounds, but he told her he was too old for war and comforted her with the prophecy that she would bear the most famous of sons. Sigmund's words were wise, for after his death, Hjordis went to King Alf, where Sigurd was raised with great honor. Every day he accomplished some new feat, and he has become the most renowned man in the world. Gudrun noted, You must have learned this from love for him, but I came here to tell you of my dreams, which have caused me great sorrow. Brynhild consoled her. Do not let such dreams distress you. Stay with your friends who wish you happiness. Gudrun shared her dream. I dreamed that we were many, walking together from the bower, and we saw a magnificent stag with golden hair that outshone all other deer. We all desired to catch this stag, but I alone managed to do so. It seemed more valuable to me than anything else. Yet, you, Brynhild, shot and killed my stag right before my eyes, causing me immense grief. Afterward, you gave me a wolf cub, which smeared me with the blood of my brothers. Brynhild interpreted the dream. I will tell you what it means, as it foreshadows future events. Sigurd, the one I love, will come to you. Grimhild will give him a potion that will lead us all into a great conflict. You will marry him, but soon lose him. Then you will wed King Atli and lose your brothers. In the end, you will kill Atli. Gudrun despaired. It is heartbreaking to know that such things will come to pass. With heavy hearts, Gudrun and her companions returned home to King Juki. 25. Sigurd joins the Jukings and marries Gudrun Sigurd, with his vast treasure and mighty steed Grani, set out from his recent adventures and journeyed towards the hall of King Juki. Upon his arrival at the castle, his impressive appearance, his gold-adorned attire, and powerful horse caught the attention of one of the king's men. The man exclaimed, Surely, this must be one of the gods, for his armor shines with gold, his horse is mightier than any other, and his weapons are exquisite. But more than all these, he himself surpasses any man I have ever seen. King Juki, hearing this, came out with his court to greet the newcomer. He asked, Who are you who rides into my city without the leave of my sons, as no one else has dared to do? Sigurd replied, I am Sigurd, son of King Sigmund. King Juki welcomed him warmly, saying, "You are most welcome here. Take whatever you wish from our kingdom." Sigurd entered the king's hall, and immediately his presence made everyone else seem small by comparison. The king and his sons treated him with great honor, and Sigurd found joy in their company. Sigurd often rode out with Giuki's sons, Gunnar and Hogni, and though they were strong warriors, Sigurd always excelled in their endeavors. Grimhild, King Giuki's wife, observed how deeply Sigurd still loved Brynhild and frequently spoke of her. She began to plot, thinking it would be best if Sigurd stayed with them and married Gudrun, Giuki's daughter. She saw that Sigurd was unmatched in goodliness, loyalty, and strength, and possessed untold wealth. The king treated Sigurd as his own son, and Gunnar and Hogni esteemed him even above themselves. One evening, as they were gathered for a feast, Grimhild approached Sigurd with a drink. She said, "We are delighted by your presence here and wish to offer you all the best we have. Here, take this horn and drink." Sigurd took the drink, and, after drinking, Grimhild said, "Let my husband, King Giuki, be your father, and I your mother. Let Gunnar and Hogni be your brothers. Let us swear oaths of brotherhood, for together we will be stronger than anyone on earth." Sigurd accepted her words with a glad heart. As he drank, the memory of Brynhild faded from his mind, and he decided to remain with the Giukings. Grimhild then went to her husband, King Giuki, and said, "We have the greatest warrior in the world among us. Let us secure his loyalty by giving him our daughter in marriage, along with great wealth and power. If we do this, he may stay with us forever." King Giuki replied, "It is rare for a king to offer his daughter without being asked, but it is fitting to offer her to a man of Sigurd's stature, rather than wait for suitors to come begging." That night, Gudrun served the guests their drinks. Sigurd noticed how beautiful and gracious she was. Over the next 5 seasons, Sigurd remained with the Giukings, enjoying honor and friendship. One day, the kings discussed matters of the realm, and Giuki said, "Sigurd, you bring great strength to our kingdom. You have given us much." Gunnar added, "We will do anything to keep you here. You shall have dominion, and our sister, Gudrun, without having to ask for her, something no other man could achieve." Sigurd responded, "I am honored by your generosity and will gladly accept." They swore oaths of brotherhood, pledging to treat each other as if they were born of the same parents. A grand feast was held to celebrate, lasting many days. Sigurd and Gudrun were married, and the celebrations grew more joyous with each passing day. The halls were filled with games, music, and mirth. After their marriage, Sigurd, Gunnar, and Hogni traveled far and wide, performing great deeds and winning many battles. They defeated kings and amassed great wealth. When they returned home, Sigurd gave Gudrun a portion of the heart of Fafnir, the dragon he had slain. She ate it and became even more courageous and wise than before. Their son was named Sigmund after Sigurd's father. In time, Grimhild approached her son Gunnar and said, "Your life and fortune bloom beautifully, except for one thing: you remain unwed. Go and seek Brynhild as your bride. It is wise counsel, and Sigurd will accompany you." Gunnar, eager at the prospect, responded, "Indeed, she is very fair, and I am keen to win her." He shared this with his father, his brothers, and Sigurd, who all encouraged him to pursue the match. 26. The wooing of Brynhild. After Sigurd had settled among the Giukings and married Gudrun, Gunnar, his brother, felt the urge to wed Brynhild, a woman of unmatched beauty and strength, daughter of King Budli. Together with Sigurd, Gunnar and Hogni embarked on a journey to King Budli's hall to seek Brynhild's hand. Upon their arrival, King Budli received them well. Gunnar expressed his desire to marry Brynhild, but King Budli explained that Brynhild was so high-minded that she would only marry the man of her own choosing. Undeterred, they continued to Hlimdale, where they were welcomed by Hymir, Brynhild's foster father. Gunnar again stated his intentions, and Hymir informed them that Brynhild's abode was nearby. However, to win her hand, a suitor must ride through the flaming fire that encircled her hall. They approached Brynhild's hall and saw the roaring fire around it, with a castle topped by a golden roof ridge shining within. Gunnar, mounted on his horse Godi, attempted to ride through the flames, but his horse shied away. Seeing this, Sigurd asked, "Why do you pull back, Gunnar?" Gunnar replied, "My horse won't tread through this fire. Let me ride your horse, Grani." "Of course," Sigurd agreed willingly. Gunnar then rode Grani towards the fire, but Grani also hesitated. Unwilling to give up, they exchanged appearances, Sigurd taking on Gunnar's form as Grimhild had taught them. Sigurd, now disguised as Gunnar, rode Grani towards the flames with Gram in hand and golden spurs on his heels. Grani, feeling the spurs, charged into the fire, causing it to roar even higher, shaking the earth as the flames reached towards the heavens. The fire eventually subsided, and Sigurd, having successfully ridden through, entered Brynhild's hall. As the saga recounts, the flame flared at its maddest, earth's fields fell a-quaking. As the red flame aloft licked the lowest of heaven, few had been fain of the rulers of folk to ride through that flame, or athwart it to tread. Inside the hall, Brynhild asked, "Who is this man?" Sigurd replied, "I am Gunnar, son of Juki. By the will and word of your father and foster father, you are awarded to me as my wife. I have ridden through your fire as you required." Brynhild hesitated, saying, "I am uncertain how to respond." Sigurd stood before her, leaning on his sword, and said, "Will a great dowry in gold and treasure be enough reward?" In response, Brynhild, clad in armor and helm, replied solemnly, "O Gunnar, do not speak to me of such things unless you are the greatest and best of all men. If you are, then you must slay those who sought my hand before you. I have fought battles alongside the king of the Greeks, our weapons stained with blood, and I yearn for such deeds." Gunnar, Sigurd assured her, "You have indeed accomplished great feats, but remember your oath regarding the one who could ride through this fire." Recognizing the truth in his words, Brynhild conceded and greeted him warmly. Sigurd stayed 3 nights in her hall, sharing her bed but placing his sword Gram between them as a sign of his commitment. Brynhild questioned why he placed the sword there, and Sigurd explained that this was necessary for him to wed his wife or face his doom. Brynhild then gave Sigurd the ring Andvari's loom that he had previously given her, and he gave her another ring from Fafnir's hoard. Afterward, Sigurd returned through the fire to his companions. They resumed their original forms, and together they returned to Limdal, where they recounted their success to Hymir. Brynhild, meanwhile, returned to her foster father Hymir and shared her feelings, revealing that she had been visited by a king who claimed to be Gunnar and had ridden through her fire. She affirmed her oath to Sigurd, whom she considered her true love and first betrothed. Returning home, the kings were welcomed by Grimhild, who thanked Sigurd for his companionship. A grand feast followed, attended by King Budli, Brynhild, and her brother Atli. The celebrations lasted for many days, culminating in Gunnar's marriage to Brynhild. As the feast concluded, Sigurd remembered the oaths he had sworn to Brynhild. Despite this, he chose to maintain peace and harmony. Brynhild and Gunnar sat together in joy and revelry, enjoying the fine wine and each other's company. 27. How the queens held angry converse together at the bathing. One day, the queens ventured to bathe in the river. Brynhild waded farther out into the water than the others, prompting Gudrun to question her actions. Brynhild responded sharply, "Why should I be lesser than you in any regard? My father is mightier, and my true love has accomplished wondrous feats, such as riding through blazing fires, while your husband was merely a vassal to King Yelprek." Infuriated, Gudrun shot back, "You should hold your tongue rather than belittle my husband. It's known far and wide that no one can match him. How dare you mock him, who was once your beloved? He slew Fafnir and rode through your fire, thinking he was Gunnar the king. He lay by your side and accepted the ring and Vari's loom from your hand. Look here, this very ring." Seeing the ring, Brynhild turned as pale as death and retreated home, saying nothing for the rest of the evening. That night, Gudrun asked Sigurd why Brynhild seemed so despondent. "I do not know," Sigurd replied with concern, "but I fear we will soon find out." "Why can't she find joy in her life?" Gudrun pondered. "She has wealth, happiness, and the admiration of all men, along with the man she desired." "Indeed," Sigurd agreed bitterly. "Where was she when she claimed she had the noblest and most beloved man? Why is she not content?" Gudrun wondered aloud. "Why does she resent Sigurd, who is so wealthy and mighty?" Brynhild's anger simmered, and she said spitefully, "You are luckier than you deserve. Your pride and rage will cause much suffering, and many men will pay for it." "I would be content," Brynhild admitted bitterly, "if you did not have the better man." "You have a husband of such nobility," Gudrun replied sharply, "that no one knows of a greater king or lord with more wealth and might." Brynhild countered, Sigurd slew Fafnir, a deed of greater worth than all of King Gunnar's might, as the saga tells it. The worm Sigurd slew, nor e'er shall that deed be worsened by age, while the world is alive. But thy brother the king never dared, never bore the flame to ride down through the fire to fare. Gudrun defended Sigurd. Grani would not endure the fire under King Gunnar, but Sigurd dared the feat. Your heart can rest without mocking him. Brynhild's resentment was apparent as she said, I do not hide my disdain for Grimhild. Gudrun warned her, do not speak ill of her. She treats you as her own daughter in all things. Brynhild continued accusingly, she was behind all this. She gave Sigurd a potion that erased all memory of me. You speak falsely, Gudrun protested. It's a lie. Brynhild retorted, enjoy Sigurd as much as you've deceived me. You conspired against me unjustly. May everything turn out as I hope in my heart. I will find more joy in him than your wishes would give me, Gudrun assured her. No one knew he had ever been with me before. You speak in anger, Brynhild warned. You will regret it. Let us cease this exchange. Gudrun countered. You started this argument and now you pretend to amend it, but a cruel and hard heart lies beneath. Let's stop this pointless chatter, Brynhild suggested. I have kept my sorrow silent for too long. I love your brother alone. Let us talk of other matters, Gudrun observed. Your heart sees beyond this moment. Thus, discord arose from their river bathing and the revelation of the ring, leading to bitter words exchanged between the queens. 28. Brynhild's great grief and mourning. After their heated exchange, Brynhild withdrew to her bed, and news spread to King Gunnar that she had fallen ill. Concerned, he went to her and asked what troubled her, but she remained silent as if dead. Pressed for an answer, she finally spoke. What did you do with the ring I gave you? The one King Budley gave me when you and King Juki came, threatening fire and sword unless I wed one of you. At that time, King Budley gave me a choice, marry whom he chose or lose his friendship and protection. I pleaded to remain unwed, to lead his army, but he gave me two options, marry his chosen one or suffer his wrath. I saw no point in resisting him. I promised to marry the man who rode through my flaming fire and killed those I commanded him to. Only Sigurd dared, because he lacked no courage. He slew Fafnir, Regin, and 5 kings, but you, Gunnar, dared nothing. Pale as death, you failed. You are no king, no hero. I swore to my father that I would love only the noblest man, Sigurd. I have broken that oath, and for that you will die. Grimhild will suffer greatly. No woman has been more evil or cowardly than she. Gunnar replied in a voice few could hear. You speak vile words, an evil-hearted woman. You insult a woman far better than yourself. She never cursed her life as you do. She never harmed the dead or killed anyone. She lives well and is praised by all. Brynhild countered, I never committed secret sins or vile deeds, but I desire your death. She attempted to attack King Gunnar, but Hogni restrained her with chains. Gunnar intervened. Release her. I do not want her in chains. Ignoring him, she said, You will never see me happy in your hall again. I will not drink, play chess, speak kindly, or decorate the halls with gold. I will not offer you counsel. Oh, my sorrow! I could not have Sigurd. She sat up, tore her needlework, and ordered her chamber doors open so her sorrowful cries could echo far and wide. Her mourning filled the halls. Meanwhile, Gudrun noticed her handmaiden's distress. Why are you so sad? What has happened? One of them, Swaflod, replied, It's a dreadful day. Our hall is filled with lamentations. Concerned, Gudrun instructed, Wake Brynhild, let's sew and be merry. No, the maid replied, I cannot wake her. She has not drunk wine or mead for many days. It seems the gods have cursed her. Gudrun asked Gunnar to visit Brynhild and convey her sympathy, but he refused. Despite this, he went to her, seeking to speak with her, but she remained silent. Frustrated, he turned to Hogni, who also failed to elicit a response. They then sought Sigurd's help. When approached, Sigurd said nothing, and the situation remained unchanged that night. The next day, after returning from hunting, Sigurd spoke to Gudrun, I sense great trouble and upheaval. Brynhild may die. Gudrun tearfully replied, She has been surrounded by strange happenings. She has slept for 7 days and nights, and no one dares wake her. She is not asleep, Sigurd countered. Her heart is set on a dreadful purpose against me. Weeping, Gudrun said, Oh, my lord, may your death not come to pass. Go and see her. Perhaps her fury can be appeased. Offer her gold to calm her grief and anger. Sigurd found Brynhild's chamber door open and assumed she slept. He uncovered her and said, "Awake, Brynhild, the sun shines. Cast off grief and find joy." "Why did you dare come here?" Brynhild accused. "You are the worst traitor to me." "I bear no ill will," Sigurd protested. "Why won't you speak? What burdens your heart?" "I will tell you of my wrath," Brynhild replied bitterly. Sigurd assured her, "You are mistaken if you think I am cruel. You married the man you chose." "No," she insisted. "Gunnar never rode through the fire for me or gave me the wealth of the slain. When he entered my hall, I thought I recognized your eyes, but I could not see clearly. The veil of fate obscured my vision." Sigurd defended Gunnar. "The sons of Juki are noble. They killed the king of the Danes and his mighty brother." Brynhild admitted, "I must repay them for many wrongs. Do not remind me of my grievances against them. But you, Sigurd, slew Fafnir and rode through the fire for my sake, not for the sons of King Juki." "I am not your husband," Sigurd reminded her gently. "You are not my wife, but a great king gave you a dowry. I never looked at Gunnar as I look at you," Brynhild confessed. "I am cold to him, though I hide it." "That is strange," Sigurd mused, "not to love such a king. What angers you most, his love should comfort you." "My greatest sorrow," she said fiercely, "is that your blood has not been spilled." "Do not fear," Sigurd assured her. "The sword will not be long in my heart. You will not live when I am dead. Our lives will soon end." Brynhild responded, "Your words bring great sorrow. You betrayed me and ruined my happiness. I care not for life or death." "Live," Sigurd pleaded. "Love Gunnar and me. I will give you all my wealth if you do not die." "You do not understand," Brynhild said sadly. "You were the first and best. I have become the most despised of women to you." "It is true," Sigurd admitted, "that I loved you more than myself. Though our lives fell into schemes from which there is no escape, I grieved that you were not my wife. Yet I accepted my fate. I was content in the king's hall. It may be that what is foretold will come to pass. I do not fear it." Brynhild replied bitterly, "You tell me too late that my sorrow affected you. I will find little pity now." "I wished," Sigurd confessed, "that we could lie together. You would have been my wife." "Such words cannot be spoken," Brynhild refused. "I will not deceive King Gunnar. I would rather die." She remembered their oath sworn on the mountain and how everything had changed. "I will hold my oath or die." "I would wed you," Sigurd offered again, and dismiss Gudrun. But Brynhild's heart was set, and Sigurd left. As the saga recounts, "Then out went Sigurd, the great king's beloved. From the sorrow and speech so much he grieved, that the iron rings woven for battle burst apart on the brave man's body." Returning to the hall, Gunnar asked if Sigurd had discovered the cause of Brynhild's grief, or if she could speak. Sigurd replied that she could. Gunnar went to her again, asking what troubled her, or if anything could be done to ease her pain. "I will not live," Brynhild declared. "Sigurd betrayed me, and you allowed him into my bed. I will not share a home with two men. This will lead to Sigurd's death, your death, or mine. He has told Gudrun everything, and she mocks me now." 29. The slaying of Sigurd Fafnir's bane. Afterwards, Brynhild sat by the wall of her bower, lamenting bitterly. She declared that everything in her life was detestable. Land, lordship, everything, because she could not have Sigurd. At that moment, Gunnar approached her once more. Brynhild spoke with deep anguish. "You will lose your realm, your wealth, your life, and me as well. I will return to my kin and live in sorrow unless you slay Sigurd and his son. Do not nurture a wolf cub." Gunnar was deeply troubled by her words, unable to grasp the full weight of the situation. Bound to Sigurd by oath, he was torn between loyalty and love. Finally, he realized the immense shame he would face if he lost Brynhild. He thought to himself, "Brynhild is more precious to me than anything else, the most beautiful woman. I would rather lay down my life than lose her love." With resolve, he called to his brother Hogni and said, "This weighs heavily upon me. I must kill Sigurd, for he has betrayed my trust. Let us take control of the gold and the realm." Hogni replied, It is wrong for us to break our oaths with treachery. Sigurd has been a great ally to us. No kings will be as powerful as we if the king of the Hun folk lives. We will never find another brother-in-law like him, nor such sons for our sister. I see clearly how Brynhild has manipulated you, and her counsel will bring us shame and harm." Gunnar insisted it must be done. "Here's a plan. Let us urge our brother Guttorm to carry out the deed. He is young, knows little, and is not bound by oaths. Hogni objected. This is a wicked plan. Though it may succeed, we will suffer greatly for betraying a man like Sigurd. Gunnar declared, Sigurd will die, or I will die. With that, he instructed Brynhild to rise and rejoice. She obeyed, but repeated that Gunnar should not come to her bed until the deed was done. The brothers discussed further, and Gunnar suggested that Sigurd's taking of Brynhild's virginity warranted death. Let us encourage Guttorm to act, he urged. They summoned Guttorm and tempted him with promises of gold and power. They concocted a potion made of wild animal parts and fed it to him, as sung in the verses. Fish of the wild wood, worms smooth crawling, with wolf meat mingled. They minced for Guttorm, then in the beaker, in the wine his mouth knew, they set it, still doing more deeds of wizards. This potion drove Guttorm into a frenzy, influenced by Grimhild's dark words, and he vowed to carry out the deed. They promised him great honor in return. Unaware of these dark plans, Sigurd could not foresee his fate or the treachery from those he trusted. The next morning, Guttorm entered Sigurd's room while he slept. Twice he hesitated, unable to strike. But the third time he drew his sword and thrust it through Sigurd, thus the blade piercing the bed beneath him. Sigurd awoke with the wound, and Guttorm fled. Sigurd hurled his sword, Gram, after him. It struck Guttorm in the back, cleaving him in two, his feet falling one way and his head and hands back into the chamber. Gudrun, asleep on Sigurd's chest, woke to a scene of unimaginable horror. Covered in Sigurd's blood, she wept bitterly, mourning in sorrowful words. Sigurd, propping himself up, spoke, Do not weep for me. Your brothers live for your happiness. I have a young son, too young to understand his enemies. They have brought misfortune upon themselves. Brynhild, who loves me above all, has brought this about. I swear, I never betrayed Gunnar. I kept my oath to him and was never too close to his wife. Had I been warned and armed, many would have died before me. Their brothers would have perished, and killing me would have been harder than slaying the mightiest beasts of the wild. With those words, Sigurd breathed his last. Gudrun wailed, and Brynhild, hearing her sorrow, laughed. Gunnar remarked, Your laughter does not come from happiness. Why does your face grow so pale? You are an evil woman. Perhaps death is near you. It would be fitting for you to witness the death of your brother Atli, standing over his corpse. We must stand over our brother-in-law, our brother's killer. Brynhild replied, Do not mock me with unfinished slaughter. Your threats do not concern Atli, who will live longer and be stronger than you. Hogni added, Brynhild's prophecy has come true, a deed that cannot be forgiven. Gudrun lamented, My kinsmen have slain my husband. When you next ride to war and enter battle, you will look around and see Sigurd not on your right or left. Then you will know he was your strength and good fortune. If he had lived and had sons, you would have been stronger with his descendants and his family. 30. The lamentation of Gudrun over Sigurd dead. Gudrun, overwhelmed with grief, sat sorrowfully by Sigurd's side. Unlike other women, she did not wail or strike her hands together. Earls came to her, wise and full of empathy, eager to console her shattered heart. Gudrun remained silent, her heart breaking with heavy sorrow. Beautiful noblewomen, wives of great earls, adorned in gold, gathered around Gudrun. Each shared tales of their own immense suffering and past hardships. Then Giaflaug, sister of Juki, spoke out, I live on earth most devoid of love. I have seen the end of 5 husbands, 2 daughters, 3 sisters, and 8 brothers. I remain alone. But Gudrun remained silent, weighed down by her grief for her dead husband, her heart full of dread. Herborg, queen of Hunland, then spoke with a heavier tale. I have a crueler tale to tell. I lost my 7 sons in distant lands, and my 8th, my husband, fell on the battlefield. I lost father, mother, and 4 brothers at sea, where wind and death played with them. I was left alone to mourn them, with no love or comfort. I was then taken as a captive, destined for the battlefield. At dawn, I had to attend to the Duke's wife, performing menial tasks under her jealous hatred and harsh lashes. I never met a better master or a worse mistress in all the wide world. But Gudrun remained silent, consumed by her sorrow for her dead husband, her heart heavy with grief. Then Gulrond, daughter of Giuki, spoke up. O wise foster mother, though you are wise, you cannot alleviate the sorrow of a young wife. She urged them to uncover Sigurd's corpse. They removed the sheet covering Sigurd and turned his face towards Gudrun's knees. Look upon your beloved, Gulrun said. Press your lips to his as you did when he was alive. Gudrun looked once, only once. She saw Sigurd's bloody locks, his lifeless eyes, and his heart pierced by a sword. Gudrun sank back on the pillow, her headscarf loosened, her cheeks red with sorrow, tears streaming down her knees. She wept bitterly, her tears soaking the pillow, like the geese crying in the home field, the birds she once owned. Gulrun, daughter of Gjuki, then spoke, I have never seen a love like yours among all men. You found joy only beside Sigurd. And Gudrun replied, Such was my Sigurd among the sons of Gjuki, like a king leek growing in the grass, or a bright stone on a royal crown. Once, she continued, I was esteemed higher than any of Herjan's maidens by the king's warriors. Now I am as small as a leaf in the wind-swept woods, now that he lies dead. I miss him in my seat. I miss him in my bed, my darling with sweet words. The sons of Gjuki brought this sorrow upon their sister. May your lands lie desolate for breaking your sworn oaths. Gunnar, you will never enjoy the gold, and the rings bought at great cost will lead you to death. You swore an oath to Sigurd. In the days of old, Gudrun recalled sadly, there was great joy in the home field when Sigurd saddled Grani and rode out to woo Brynhild, an ill day, an ill woman, and most ill fortune. Brynhild then spoke, daughter of Budli, May the woman who gained praise for you, Gudrun, lack both love and children. Many words have been exchanged this morning. But Gulrun, daughter of Gjuki, interjected, Hold your tongue and cease these words, despised by all. You have been the bane of brave men, bringing waves of ill upon your mind. You have been a sorrow to 7 great kings and the death of goodwill between wives and women. Brynhild retorted, It was Atli alone who brought suffering upon us, my own brother, born of Budli. I saw the gold gleaming in the hall of the Hunnish people, the gold taken from the kings of Gjuki. I have paid dearly for what I saw that day. She stood by a pillar, clutching it tightly, fire flashing from her eyes, venom spewing forth, as she gazed upon the wounds of the slain Sigurd. 31. The ending of Brynhild. No one could understand why Brynhild wept and mourned for what she had once wished for, with joy. But then she spoke. I had a dream, Gunnar, that my bed was cold and that you rode into the hands of your enemies. Ill fortune awaits you and all your kin, oath-breakers. On the day you slew him, you dimly remembered how you mixed your blood with Sigurd's. You have repaid him poorly for all he did for you, making you the mightiest of men. Sigurd proved his steadfastness when he came to me and placed his sword, forged with venom, between us. Yet soon after you turned against him and me. While I stayed at home with my father, content and with everything I desired, I had no intention of belonging to any of you. But Atli came, leading me aside in secret, asking if I would not have the man who rode Grani, someone not like you. In those days, I had pledged myself only to Sigmund's son, and no other. Now, your fate shall not be better for my death. Gunnar, moved by her words, embraced Brynhild, urging her to live and offering her wealth. Others joined in, pleading with her not to die, but she pushed them away, asserting that it was not their place to stop her from doing what she desired. Gunnar then turned to Hogni for counsel, asking him to try and soften Brynhild's heart. Hogni refused, stating that no one should prevent her from dying, as she would be of no benefit to them and had not been since her arrival. Brynhild then called for gold, inviting those who desired wealth to come forward. She took up a sword, thrusting it under her armpit and reclining onto the pillows, saying, Come, take the gold if you wish. Everyone present remained silent. Brynhild spoke again, Take the gold and rejoice in it. She then addressed Gunnar, foretelling what would come to pass in the future. She predicted that Grimhild the Wise would reconcile him with Gudrun soon. Gudrun and Sigurd's daughter would be named Swanhild, the fairest of all women. Gudrun would marry Atli against her will. Gunnar would desire Oddrun, but Atli would forbid it. However, they would meet in secret, and Oddrun would love him deeply. Atli would betray Gunnar, casting him into a pit of snakes. Eventually, Atli and his sons would be killed with Gudrun as their slayer. Afterward, the sea would carry her to the court of King Jonakr, where she would bear sons of great renown. Swanhild would be sent away and handed over to King Jormunrek, meeting a tragic end due to the treacherous advice of Bikki, thus ending their lineage, bringing further sorrows to Gudrun. Now, Brynhild requested of Gunnar as a final boon, Make a great funeral pyre on the plain meadows for all of us, Sigurd, those slain with him, and myself. Cover it with red-dyed cloth from the Gauls. Burn me beside the king of the Huns, with my men laid 2 at my head and 2 at my feet, along with 2 hawks. Let everything be equally shared. Place a drawn sword between us, as we once shared a bed together, and then we shall be known as husband and wife. Let no door close between us in the afterlife. Include my 5 bondwomen and 8 bondmen, whom my father gave me, in the pyre, along with those who were slain with Sigurd. I would say more, she continued, but my wounds are bleeding, and my life ebbs away. Yet what I have spoken is true. Sigurd's body was dressed in ancient fashion, and a mighty funeral pyre was erected. Once it was lit, Sigurd Fafnir's Bane, his 3-year-old son, and Gudrun were placed upon it. Brynhild, after speaking with her handmaidens and distributing gold, was carried out and laid beside Sigurd. Thus their lives came to an end. 32. Gudrun wedded to Atli. The tales of Sigurd Fafnir's Bane are often recounted with reverence, for his name is eternal among the heroes of the northern lands. Sigurd's unmatched greatness will never fade as long as these stories are told. One day, as Gudrun sat in her chamber, she lamented her lost love. She spoke sorrowfully. Life was better when I had Sigurd. He stood above other men as gold stands above iron, or as the leek towers over other grasses, or the hart surpasses other wild creatures. But my brothers could not bear to see me with such a man, the best of all men. They could not rest until they had killed him. Grani, Sigurd's horse, made a terrible clamor when he saw his master gravely wounded. I spoke to him as if he were a man, but he sank to the ground, knowing that Sigurd was dead. Consumed by grief, Gudrun wandered into the wild woods, surrounded by the howling of wolves. She thought death would be more pleasant than life. She continued her journey until she reached the hall of King Alf in Denmark and stayed with Thora, the daughter of Hakon, for 7 years. There, she was welcomed warmly. She spent her days doing needlework, creating intricate scenes of great deeds and noble tales from those days. Swords and armor, the ship of King Sigmund sailing along the coast, and the battles fought by Sigar and Siggeir in southern Fionn. This work gave her some relief from her sorrow. Meanwhile, Grimhild learned where Gudrun was living and called her sons together. She asked if they would make amends to Gudrun for the loss of her husband and son, insisting that it was right and proper to do so. Gunnar agreed, speaking up to suggest compensating her with gold for her sorrows. The brothers gathered their friends and prepared for their journey. They readied their horses, helmets, shields, and armor, setting out in the most splendid fashion. Not a great warrior stayed behind. Their horses were adorned in mail coats, and each knight wore a helmet adorned with gold or silver. Grimhild joined them, believing their mission would not succeed if she stayed at home. Their company numbered about 500 men, all noble. Among them were Waldemar of Denmark, Eimod, and Jaroslav. They arrived at King Alf's hall, where they were met by the Longbeards, Franks, and Saxons. They came in full battle gear, wearing red fur coats, as the song goes, short-cut armor, strongly hammered helmets, girded with good swords, red hair gleaming. The brothers approached Gudrun with fine gifts and spoke kindly to her, but she trusted none of them. Gunnar then brought her a drink mixed with harmful substances. After drinking it, she no longer remembered their wrongs against her. The drink contained a blend of the strength of the earth and sea with the blood of her son. The horn bore all the runes, carved and stained with blood, as described below. On the horn's surface were there all the characters of the alphabet, carved correctly and stained red. How should I interpret them correctly? The long lingfish. From the land of Hadding, unharvested wheat ears, and the entrails of wild creatures. In that beer were mixed many ills together. Blood from all the trees and charred acorns, the black dew from the hearth, the doomed beast's entrails, and the boiled swine's liver, for it dulls all wrongs. With their hearts reconciled, they celebrated. Grimhild came to Gudrun and said, "Welcome, daughter. I offer you gold and all manner of good things to take with you to your father. Precious rings and fine bed linens from the Hun women, the most courteous and well-dressed of all. This is how we atone for your husband's death. After this, you shall be given to Atli, the mighty king, and be mistress of all his power. Do not cast aside all your friends for the sake of one man, but do as we command." Gudrun replied, I will never marry King Atli. It is inappropriate for us to have children together. Grimhild responded, Do not hold on to your anger. It will be as if Sigurd and Sigmund were alive when you bear sons. Gudrun answered, I cannot remove my thoughts from him, for he was the greatest of all men. Grimhild insisted, It is destined that you must marry this king and no other. Gudrun warned, Do not give this man to me, for evil will come upon your family from him. He will also treat his own sons badly and will suffer a grim revenge in return. Grimhild grew furious and said, Do as we command you and receive great honor, our friendship, and the estates called Vinbjorg and Valbjorg. Thus, the power of Grimhild's words made it inevitable for Gudrun to agree. Gudrun said, Thus it must inevitably happen against my will, and there will be little joy and much sorrow. The men mounted their horses, and the women were placed in wagons. They traveled for 4 days on horseback, then another 4 by ship, and finally 4 more days by land, until they arrived at a grand hall. Many people came to greet Gudrun, and an exceptionally splendid feast was held there, as had been agreed between the families. It was conducted in a proud and stately manner. At this feast, Atli celebrated his marriage with Gudrun. However, Gudrun's heart never warmed to him, and their life together was far from sweet and kind. Chapter 33. Atli invites the Jukings to his kingdom. Now the tale tells that one night, King Atli woke from a troubled sleep and spoke to Gudrun. I dreamed, he said, that you thrust me through with a sword. Gudrun, interpreting the dream, replied, Such dreams often foretell fire and destruction when one dreams of iron. Perhaps it reflects your pride, thinking yourself the greatest of men. Atli continued, Furthermore, I dreamed that 2 sorb tree saplings grew here. Though I wished them no harm, they were torn up by the roots, stained with blood, and brought to me to eat. Also, I dreamed that 2 hungry hawks flew from my hand to the depths of despair. It seemed their hearts were mixed with honey, and I ate them. Then again, I dreamed that 2 fair whelps lay before me, loudly crying, and I ate their flesh, though I did not desire to. Gudrun responded, These dreams are dark omens, and they will come to pass. Surely your sons are near death, and many heavy burdens will fall upon us. Atli added, Yet again I dreamed that I lay in a bath, and people plotted to kill me. Time passed, and despite their union, there was no love between them. Atli began to contemplate how he could obtain the abundant gold that once belonged to Sigurd and was now in the possession of King Gunnar and his brothers. Atli, a powerful and wise king, lord over many men, consulted with his advisors about what to do. Knowing well that Gunnar and his brothers possessed more wealth than anyone else, he decided to send messengers to invite them to a grand feast, intending to honor them in various ways. The chief messenger was named Vingi. Queen Gudrun, suspecting foul play and fearing for her brothers, decided to act. She cut runes, took a gold ring, and tied a wolf's hair to it, giving it to the king's messengers as a hidden warning. The messengers set off according to the king's orders. Before arriving, Vingi saw the runes and twisted their meaning, presenting them as if Gudrun was urging her brothers to come to King Atli. They arrived at King Gunnar's hall and were warmly welcomed. Great fires were lit, and they drank the finest of drinks in celebration. Vingi then spoke, King Atli sends me here, eager for you to come to his home in all glory. He offers you honors, helmets, shields, swords, armor, gold, splendid garments, horses, armies, and vast lands. Above all, he desires to grant you his kingdom and lordship. Gunnar turned to Hogni and said quietly, How should we respond to this invitation? He offers us wealth and power, yet no kings possess as much gold as we do, from the hoard once on Nidaheath. Our chambers are filled with gold, weapons, and all manner of war gear. I also know my horse is the best, my sword the sharpest, and my gold the most glorious. Hogni replied, I find his invitation strange. He rarely acts in this manner, and it would be unwise to trust him. When I saw those valuable gifts he sent, I was surprised to see a wolf's hair tied to a gold ring. Perhaps Gudrun sees him as a wolf, meaning us harm. Vingi then showed them the runes he claimed Gudrun had sent, altering their message to seem favorable. Most of the people went to bed, but these men continued drinking with a few others. Kostbera, Hogni's wife and the fairest of women, came to them and examined the runes carefully. Gunnar's wife, Glomvor, a strong-hearted woman, also looked at them. As the night wore on, more drinks were poured, and the kings became exceedingly drunk. Vingi, noticing their state, said, "I cannot hide that King Atli is slow and old to defend his realm, but his sons are young and insignificant. He will give you rule over his lands while they are still young, and he greatly desires that you enjoy this before anyone else." Thus, under the influence of drink and swayed by promises, Gunnar gave his word to go and informed his brother Hogni of his decision. Hogni replied, "Since you have given your word, we must go. I will not fail to follow you, though I am reluctant to make this journey." 34. The dreams of the wives of the Jukings. After the men had drunk their fill, they went to sleep. Kosbera, however, carefully examined the runes, deciphering the hidden meanings beneath their surface. Her wisdom enabled her to interpret them correctly despite their deceptive appearance. She then went to bed beside her husband, Hogni. When they woke up, she spoke to him, "You are planning to leave home. That is ill-advised. Wait for another time. You are hardly a skilled rune reader if you believe these runes are your sister's invitation for this journey." I read the runes and marveled at Gudrun's wisdom, yet beneath their surface lies your downfall. She either omitted a letter, or someone has tampered with them. Now listen to my dream. I dreamed a mighty river surged in upon us here, breaking apart the hall's timbers. Hogni replied, "Women often have dark thoughts, but I am not inclined to assume evil intentions without cause. Perhaps he will welcome us warmly." She retorted, "You must find out for yourselves, but this invitation does not promise friendship. I also dreamed another river burst in with a great and ominous rush, tearing up the hall's days and breaking both your legs. Surely that signifies something." Hogni answered, "Those are likely meadows along our path, where hay seeds cling to our legs as we walk through." "Again," she continued, "I dreamed your cloak was on fire, flames leaping above the hall." Hogni nodded. "I understand that omen. Here is my brightly dyed cloak. It will burn and blaze, just as you dreamed." "I dreamed a bear entered," she added, "and demolished the king's high seat, its paws striking fear into us all, gathering us into its mouth, leaving us helpless. It filled us with great horror." Hogni reassured her. "It signifies a great storm, akin to the white bear in your mind." "An eagle came next," she recounted, "swooping through the hall, drenching me and everyone in blood. It does not bode well. I thought it was King Atli's double." Hogni replied, "We often slaughter animals and feast heartily. The eagle's dream likely concerns cattle. Atli holds no ill will toward us." With that, they ended their conversation. Meanwhile, Glomvor, Gunnar's wife, lay beside him. She too had dreams that troubled her sleep, and awoke her husband to share them. "I dreamed that I saw the door of our hall torn from its hinges and lying in the mud." Gunnar responded, "The door will hold firm. It has seen many storms. Do not worry about a mere dream." Glomvor continued, "I also dreamed that your fine stallion Godi fell dead before the gate." Gunnar reassured her, "Godi will gallop strong tomorrow. Dreams often distort our fears." "And yet another dream," Glomvor said. "I saw a river of blood flood through our hall, sweeping us all away." Gunnar tried to soothe her fears. "Dreams often reflect our deepest worries, nothing more. There is no need for concern." But Glomvor could not shake her unease. "These dreams are too vivid to ignore. Be cautious, Gunnar." Despite the warnings from their wives' dreams, both Hogni and Gunnar were determined to proceed with their journey. The ominous dreams of the women hinted at the tragic events that were soon to unfold, yet the men dismissed them as mere figments of a restless mind. 35. The Journey of the Jukings to King Atli. The saga continues with Gunnar, who, like his brothers, faced ominous signs before embarking on their journey. Upon awakening, his wife Glomvor recounted troubling dreams that seemed to foretell deceit and danger ahead. In one dream, she began, "I saw a bloody sword brought into the hall, and you were stabbed by it. At each end of the sword, wolves howled." Gunnar interpreted, "Such visions often portend treacherous attacks. Blood-stained weapons speak of ambushes and violence." Glomvor persisted. "Another dream showed sorrowful women entering, grieving heavily, and choosing you as their companion. Perhaps these were destined for you." Gunnar reflected, "Such dreams are hard to decipher, but fate cannot be avoided. It may be that my days are numbered." They rose in the morning to prepare for their journey, but encountered obstacles along the way. Gunnar, sensing the gravity of their mission, called for wine from great casks, preparing for what might be their final feast. Addressing Fjornir, Gunnar said, "Pour us wine, for this may indeed be our last celebration. If death claims us, the old wolf will come for the gold, and the bear will spare no war tusks." Their household accompanied them tearfully, and as they departed, Hogni's son bid them farewell with somber words. Most of their people stayed behind, while Solar and Snavar, sons of Hogni, and a renowned champion named Orkning, Kosbera's brother, joined them on their journey. Despite attempts to dissuade them, the people followed to the ships. Glomvor, sensing ill omens, warned Vingi of the potential for great misfortune during their travels. Vingi assured her, "I speak no falsehoods. May the gallows and misfortunes befall me if I deceive you." As they parted ways, Kosbera wished them well, and Hogni reassured her with steadfast resolve. Rowing swiftly, their ship nearly capsized from their powerful strokes. Upon landing, they secured the vessel and rode through the dark wilderness on noble steeds. Soon they encountered King Atli's formidable army, echoing with the tumult of weapons and the clamor of men. They approached the fortress gates, finding them closed against them. Hogni, undeterred, broke open the gates, leading them into the stronghold. Vingi, now revealing his treachery, threatened them ominously. "You should have refrained from this course. Stay here while I prepare your gallows. I invited you in good faith, but now disaster awaits you. Soon you will hang from that very tree." Hogni retorted defiantly, "Your threats do not scare us. We have faced battle without flinching, and your schemes will not save you. You have sealed your own fate." With swift justice, they cast Vingi down and struck him with their axes until he lay dead, ending the threat he posed to them. Thus, the Jew kings confronted their destiny at King Atli's fortress, setting the stage for further trials and tribulations in the saga. 36. The battle in the burg of King Atli. Then they rode to King Atli's hall, where Atli assembled his army for battle, positioning them so that a wall separated them from the brothers. "Welcome," said Atli. "Hand over to me that abundant gold which rightfully belongs to me, the wealth once owned by Sigurd, now rightfully Gudrun's." Gunnar replied defiantly, "You will never lay hands on that wealth. You must face mighty warriors here before we part with our lives. You lay out this feast as if you were a great man, unwilling to hold back your eagles and wolves." "It has long been my intention," said Atli, "to take your lives and possess the gold, avenging the act where you deceived your kin. Now I shall have my revenge," Hogni retorted. "Brooding over that plan won't help you now. It's time for action." With that, they fiercely engaged in battle, exchanging missile fire at the onset. Meanwhile, Gudrun received word of the battle. Enraged, she cast off her mantle, rushed out to greet the newcomers, kissed her brothers, and showed them great affection. Their final reunion. "I thought I had given counsel to keep you from coming here," she said bitterly, "but no one can avoid their destined fate." She then asked, "Would seeking peace be of any use?" But Gunnar and Hogni grimly shook their heads, rejecting the idea. Seeing the battle turning against her brothers, Gudrun steeled herself, donned armor, grasped a sword, and fought alongside her brothers, displaying bravery equal to the bravest men. Many marveled at her defense. The battle raged on fiercely, with the brothers notably leading the charge. By midday, the mead ran red with blood. The sons of Hogni fought valiantly. King Atli remarked, "We have a great and formidable army, yet many of us have fallen. I am displeased that 19 of my champions are dead, leaving only 6 alive." A temporary halt fell over the battlefield. Atli continued, "We were 4 brothers, and now I am left alone. I had gained a great kinship and thought my fortune secure. I had a wife, fair and wise, noble in spirit and heart, yet we have little peace between us. But you have killed many of my kin, deceived me of realm and riches, and worst of all, you have killed my sister." Hogni retorted sharply, "Why do you babble like this? You were the first to break the peace. You took my kinswoman, starved her to death, murdered her, and seized her wealth, an act unbecoming of a king. I find it laughable that you complain of your woes. Instead, I thank the gods that misfortune has found you." 37. The slaying of the Jew kings. King Atli goaded his warriors fiercely, and they eagerly pressed forward into battle. However, the Jew kings fought back with equal ferocity, forcing King Atli himself to retreat into the hall, where the fighting continued unabated. The battle was brutal, claiming countless lives on both sides until only Gunnar and Hogni remained standing amid the carnage. Despite their valiant efforts, they knew more warriors would need to fall before they could be overcome. Finally, the tide turned against Gunnar. Surrounded by adversaries, he was overpowered, captured, and bound in chains. Meanwhile, Hogni displayed immense bravery and strength, single-handedly defeating 20 of King Atli's fiercest champions and sending many more into the flames of the hall. King Atli, marveling at Hogni's prowess, declared, "It is a marvel how many men have fallen before him. Cut out his heart and let that be his end." Facing his fate with unwavering resolve, Hogni replied, "Do as you will. I will meet my end bravely. You will see that I fear nothing, for I have faced many trials and hardships in my life, and now, though sorely wounded, I will face this challenge as well." A counselor of King Atli then suggested sparing Hogni temporarily and sacrificing the thrall Jali instead, arguing that Hogni's value would diminish over time. Jali, hearing this, cried out in despair and tried to escape, but he was caught and swiftly put to death. In an uncommon display of compassion from a man about to meet his death, Hogni pleaded for the thrall's life, unable to bear his cries. Moved by Hogni's plea, King Atli spared the thrall for the time being. Despite their valor, both Gunnar and Hogni were captured and chained. King Atli demanded Gunnar reveal the location of the hidden gold to save his own life. Gunnar defiantly responded, "First, let me see the heart of my brother Hogni." The men then cut out Jali's heart and brought it to Gunnar. He examined it and remarked, "This trembling heart of Jali is nothing like the proud heart of Hogni. It trembles now far more than it ever did in his chest." Then they turned to Hogni and fulfilled King Atli's command by cutting out his heart. Despite the agony, Hogni maintained his composure and even chuckled, astonishing all who witnessed his fortitude. His bravery left an indelible mark on those present, ensuring his legacy would endure. Turning back to Gunnar, they showed him Hogni's heart. Gunnar said, "This mighty heart of Hogni is nothing like the feeble heart of Jali. Even as it trembles now, it trembled far less when it was still within him. But now, O Atli, as we face death, so shall you. I alone know where the gold is hidden, and Hogni will not speak. I have long pondered this, and now I have decided. The Rhine River shall guard the gold, rather than let the Huns possess it." King Atli ordered, "Take away the bondsmen," and they obeyed. Witnessing all this, Gudrun approached King Atli and declared, "May ill fortune befall you now and forevermore, for you have dealt treacherously with me." Gunnar was then thrown into a pit filled with snakes and worms, his hands tightly bound. Yet Gudrun sent him a harp, and with remarkable skill he played it using his toes. His music was so captivating that even those who heard it could hardly believe it came from his feet. Gunnar's playing was so powerful that eventually all the worms fell asleep, except for one large, menacing adder. With a deadly strike, this serpent ended Gunnar's life with great courage and determination, marking the end of his days. In a tale filled with vengeance and tragedy, the conflict between Gudrun and King Atli reaches its grim conclusion. Atli boasts of his victory over Gudrun's family, prompting her vow of eternal sorrow and revenge. Despite a solemn funeral feast meant to reconcile their factions, Gudrun harbors secret plans for further retaliation. She commits a horrific act by killing Atli's sons and serving them to him, intensifying their feud. With assistance from Hogni's son, Gudrun then murders Atli in his sleep, justifying her actions amidst his accusations. After giving Atli a dignified burial as promised, Gudrun sets fire to the hall, ensuring the demise of Atli's people and sealing the tragic fate of both lineages. 39. How Gudrun cast herself into the sea but was brought ashore again. Gudrun, having borne a daughter named Swanhild by Sigurd, was renowned for her beauty and the sharpness of her eyes, reminiscent of her father. Swanhild's allure was so great that few dared to meet her gaze, and she shone among women like the sun outshines the stars. One day, consumed by grief and despair, Gudrun went to the sea. She gathered stones in her arms and waded into the water, intending to end her own life. However, the powerful currents and waves carried her along until she arrived at the stronghold of King j.r.r, a mighty ruler with a vast kingdom and numerous subjects. King j.r., moved by compassion upon seeing Gudrun, took her into his care. Eventually they were wed, and together they raised their children, Hamdir, Sorli, and Erp. Swanhild, Gudrun's beloved daughter by Sigurd, also grew up in King j.r.'s household. Thus, despite her attempt to escape her pain through the sea's embrace, Gudrun found herself washed ashore into a new life under the protection and shelter of King Jonakr. 40. The wedding and slaying of Swanhild. In those days, Jormunrek was a powerful king, and his son was named Randver. One day, the king called his son and said, "Randver, I have an errand for you to King Jonakr, accompanied by my advisor Bikki. Swanhild, the daughter of Sigurd Fafnir's Bane, is raised there, and I know she is the most beautiful maiden in all the land. I desire her to be my wife above all others, so you shall go and propose to her on my behalf." Randver replied, "It is fitting and honorable, my lord, that I carry out your request." Thus, the king arranged their journey, and they traveled until they reached King Jonakr's realm. There they saw Swanhild and were greatly taken by her exceptional beauty. Later, Randver spoke privately to the king and said, "King Jormunrek wishes to become your brother-in-law. He has heard of Swanhild and desires her as his wife, for there is no man greater than him." King Jonakr replied, "This is a prestigious match, for he is a renowned man." Gudrun remarked, "It is risky to trust in changing fortunes." Despite Gudrun's warning, the alliance proceeded due to the king's influence and other factors. Swanhild boarded a ship with a splendid retinue and sat beside the king's son at the stern. Then Bikki spoke to Randver, "It would be better if you had such a lovely woman as your wife instead of that old man there." Randver liked these words, and he sweetly spoke to Swanhild, who responded in kind. Upon their arrival, Bikki said to the king, "It is fitting that you know what has transpired, though it is difficult to say. Your son has won Swanhild's heart completely, and she is now his lover. This cannot go unpunished." Bikki had given the king many bad pieces of advice before, but this one struck the hardest. Unable to contain his anger, the king ordered Randver to be seized and hanged from a tree. As Randver was led to his execution, he plucked the feathers from his hawk and showed them to his father. Seeing this, the king exclaimed, "Now everyone can see that he thinks my honor has flown away like the feathers of this hawk," and he ordered Randver to be released from the gallows. But Bikki had already ensured Randver's death by that time. Moreover, Bikki suggested, "You have more grievances to settle with Swanhild than anyone else. She deserves a shameful death." "Yes," agreed the king, "we will follow your advice." So Swanhild was bound at the castle gate, and horses were sent to trample her. But when she opened her eyes wide, the horses refused to touch her. Seeing this, Bikki ordered a bag to be drawn over her head, and thus she lost her life. 41. Gudrun sends her sons to avenge Swanhild. Upon hearing of Swanhild's death, Gudrun confronted her sons. "Why do you sit here peacefully, chatting away, while Jormunrek has brutally killed your sister, trampling her under horses? You lack the courage of Gunnar or Hogni. They would have avenged their kin." Hamdir replied, "You didn't praise Gunnar and Hogni when they killed Sigurd, leaving you covered in his blood. Your brothers weren't properly avenged when your own sons were killed. But it wouldn't be wrong for us to slay King Jormunrek, especially since you're pushing us so hard towards it with your harsh words." Gudrun then laughed and served them strong drink in large goblets. Afterwards, she armed them with excellent armor and all they needed for war. Then Hamdir said, "This is goodbye, for you'll soon hear news of us and mourn us and Swanhild." With that, they departed. Gudrun went to her chamber, her heart swollen with sorrow, and spoke aloud, "I've been married 3 times. First to Sigurd the dragon slayer, who was betrayed and killed, the greatest sorrow of all. Then to King Atli, my heart so hardened against him that, in my grief's rage, I killed both his children and mine. I threw myself into the sea, but it cast me ashore, and I was given to this king. I sent Swanhild away with great wealth, and now my second greatest sorrow after Sigurd is her death under horses' hooves. But the cruelest and most bitter of my griefs was Gunnar's death in the snake pit, and the hardest was Hogni's heart being cut out. Ah, it would be better if Sigurd could come to me and take me away, for now I'm left without sons or daughters to comfort me. Do you remember, Sigurd, the promises we made when we were together? You promised to come and see me, even from beyond the grave." With these sorrowful words, Gudrun's lament came to an end. 42. The latter end of all the kin of the Jew kings. Now, hear the tale of Gudrun's sons. She armored them so well that no steel could pierce it. She warned them not to play with stones or heavy objects, for it would bring them harm. As they journeyed, they met their brother Erp and asked how he would aid them. He replied, "Just as one hand helps another, or one foot aids another." They ignored his words and killed him on the spot. Continuing on, Hamdir stumbled and reached out his hand to steady himself, saying, "Erp spoke the truth. I would have fallen if not for a helping hand." Soon after, Sorley stumbled but steadied himself with both feet, admitting, "I would have fallen if I hadn't balanced myself with both feet." They regretted their deed against Erp. They arrived at King Jormunrek's court and attacked him immediately. Hamdir cut off both of the king's hands, while Sorley severed both his feet. Hamdir lamented, "If only Erp were alive, we would have taken his head instead. Our brother whom we killed on the road, we realized our mistake too late." As the song goes, "We would have taken his head, if Erp were still alive, our bold brother whom we killed on the way, the renowned in battle." They ignored their mother's advice about avoiding stones, as they now faced enemies who could not be harmed by iron. They fought bravely and defended themselves, causing great losses to their foes. An old one-eyed man approached them and scoffed, "You're fools if you can't finish off these men." The king challenged, "Tell us how if you can." The man replied, "Stone them to death." And so it was done. Stones rained down from all sides, ending their lives. Thus, the entire lineage of the Jew kings met its end. May all lords now be wiser in mind. May the sorrow of maidens forever diminish, for this tale of trouble told to its bitter end.